In the hour when night surrenders to dawn and silence tastes of ash, a lone match flared above a fresh-turned mound. Then a stranger's voice murmured, "That's no place to end." The words drifted through the chill like embers that refused to die, and the girl kneeling in the dust, Leora Thane, felt something crack open behind her breastbone. She hadn't heard approaching footfalls. She had been too numb, too emptied by grief and fear to notice the crunch of gravel or the whisper of a coat hem across brittle sage. Until now, only the grave had listened. She jerked upright, auburn hair matted with dried river mud, eyes raw from hours of crying that tasted of salt and gunpowder. Her hands were caked with soil, fingers cramping around a tarnished locket she'd dug from the shallow trench. For a heartbeat, she could not speak fear and rage. Not at her tongue yet, the stranger simply crouched an arm's length away and offered the flickering match to the early wind, illuminating calm hazel eyes and a jaw shadowed by journey dust. He did not reach for her. He did not reach for the Colt on his belt. He only studied the open grave as if it were a ledger line holding someone's last unfinished sum. Then he drew a slow breath. "I'm Calder Rye," he said, voice pitched low so it would not carry across the sleeping town beyond the scrub. "Saw lights out here when the moon dipped. Figured no good thing glitters at that hour." Leora steadied herself on trembling legs. Calder Rye. She tasted the name, found no threat in it, yet held her guard. Knights in the frontier carved caution. "Deep, you should have ridden on," she rasped. "This ground's none of your business." A distant train whistle mourned across the valley, then was gone. Aside from crickets, they were alone, two strangers balanced on the rim of dawn, and a grave too small for the secrets it tried to swallow. Asterisk. Drop a in the comments if you've ever stood at a crossroads with no road left, warned the town of Briar End squatted in a bowl of bleached prairie 30 miles off the mail route, a place the new rails bypassed because their surveyors deemed the land ill-favored, ill-watered, and ill-winded. Yet people clung to it the way lichen clings to stone, stubborn, hardened, quietly alive. At dawn, shutters creaked open along the crooked main street. A baker's chimney coughed its first plume of coal smoke. The undertaker polished his single scratched window, hoping there'd be no new patron, despite the scupper promise of trouble. Calder led Leora toward that waking street with measured pace, letting her decide each step. When she stumbled, he offered an arm like a bridge but never pushed. She held herself stiff, half ashamed of needing help, half afraid refusal might shatter what little strength remained. Behind them the grave waited unmarked, only a ridge of raw-turned dirt and the imprint of her knees. Calder had asked nothing of its occupant. She had answered nothing. Some griefs shatter if named too soon. Still, he had spoken the words that pierced her despair. "That's no place to end. Now." As sun stretched pale fingers over corrugated roofs, Calder guided her to the watering trough beside the livery. Its surface mirrored Leora's reflection, hollow cheeks smudged by soot, a bruise purple as dusk at her temple, eyes the color of stormlight gathering. She washed soil from her nails, watched the dirt swirl, then vanish. Small BSOAU Calder. Fetched coffee from the half-awake cafe across the street, paid with a silver eagle that flashed once before it vanished. Folks noticed the coin ranch hands, a deputy leaning in a doorway, but more than the gleam they marked the rumor that Calder Ray always paid in silver, never stayed in one place long, and never lost a fight he chose to finish. Some said he'd once been Pinkerton, others that he scouted for Sherman's men and walked away owing no allegiance but his own code. Asterisk, find truth. Settle debts, move on. Asterisk, Leora didn't know those stories. She only knew the coffee was hot, bitter, and that the man who offered it waited while she drank every drop. "Name?" he asked, quiet. "Leora Thane." "Anyone here can be trusted?" His glance flicked toward the sheriff's office where porch boards sagged under the weight of one Sleepy lawman. She hesitated. Sheriff Kinnick's kind, but he won't stand against the Whitecliff Company. Not since they bought the deed to half the valley. Calder's brows knit. Whitecliff? They run ore carts west of here. Zinc lead? Lead, mostly. And lead in the cartridges they press after dark. A shiver crawled her spine, though the sun now climbed bright. They bury their mistakes out past the creek. Calder's gaze sharpened. The grave. My brother, she whispered. Elias tried to stop them. They sent a man named Merritt Creed to make an example. Share this video with someone who's fought for what's right, even when the odds looked impossible. Asterisk asterisk. 2 asterisk asterisk. The story unspooled between them in thin threads as Briar End fully woke. Leora spoke haltingly, voice fraying each time her brother's name surfaced. Calder listened, sipping coffee that turned lukewarm, but never interrupting. Elias Thane, 23, geologist by training, dreamer by heart, had discovered evidence Whitecliff's assays were fraudulent. Where the company reported low-yield veins, Elias mapped rich galena seams the size of cathedrals. He'd written to federal regulators, to newspapers back east, intent on exposing a racket that kept miners underpaid while executives funneled millions through dummy accounts. Whitecliff learned of the letters 2 nights ago when Elias rode to collect proof from a remote shaft. He vanished. Leora tracked his horse's prints to the creek, found churned mud, spent shells, and half-dragged footprints ending at the pine copse beyond. As she saw freshly spaded earth, when she clawed it open, her fingers closed on Elias's empty coat, the lining ripped out. No body lay beneath, only that tarnished locket she now kept clenched. A warning, Calder murmured. They want you looking over your shoulder, not under theirs. I will dig every grave in this valley if I must, she said, blunt. I will find him alive or bury him proper. And I will make Merritt Creed beg before I'm done. Calder's eyes reflected flint. I've crossed Creed once. It ended in blood neither of us meant. He's clever, makes cruelty look like a ledger balance. So help me stop him. Calder exhaled through his nose, studying the street where Whitecliff riders now drifted in twos, black dusters, brass buttons, repeater rifles slung casual but ready. Their faces were bland as bank vaults. One nodded toward Calder, marking the stranger. Another scanned Leora with a smirk too practiced. To be lust, it was appraisal. Leora stiffened. Calder's hand rested near his belt, but did not hover. Predators smelled fear. He offered none. What's your plan? He asked her. I need evidence Elias gathered. It's hidden in the old surveyor's library at Hollow Mason North Ridge. That's 8 miles, rugged trail. Whitecliff. We'll move the records once they realize Elias is missing. Tonight, most of their men guard payroll wagons heading south. Hollow Mesa will be thin, Calder considered. We'll ride at dusk. Until then we keep you unseen. Leora's jaw set. I won't cower in some loft. You'll live to fight, he corrected gently. And you'll choose where the first punch falls. A horse snorted. Sheriff Kinnick crossed the street, leather apron over his badge, wiping ink from stubby fingers. Mornin', Leora, he greeted, voice too cheery. Then he noticed her swollen eyes, the stranger at her shoulder. Trouble? Only if men stop answering when justice calls, she replied. Kinnick faltered. Calder stepped in. Sheriff, Whitecliff men buried something near Dry Creek. You might want to look. Kinnick's face tightened. Company says trespassers set dynamite and blew themselves. They'll sue the county if folks start rumor. Leora spat dust. Rumor has a body, Sheriff. He looked away, shameful. My jurisdiction ends at the creek, he muttered. Calder studied him, found fear, resignation, perhaps a flicker of conscience. Then deputize me, he said. I'll carry your authority to reclaim whatever lies there. Kinnick blinked. Deputize a stranger? But Calder's stare cut through doubt. After a long beat, the sheriff drew a tin star from his vest pocket, the spare he rarely used, and pressed it into Calder's palm. "God help you," he whispered. Calder pinned the badge low inside his coat where it would flash only when needed. To Leora he said, "Let's find you a safe roof. Then we gather supplies." Deputy Jonah, Kinnick's only deputy, watched from the doorway chewing cedar twigs. His eyes followed Calder and Leora as they turned down an alley toward the boarding house. He tapped his temple acknowledging quick minds, but remained leaning, unwilling to tilt the scale. Above, clouds began to mass despite the clear dawn. Briar End had learned long ago, storms often disguise themselves as calm. 3. By noon heat shimmered like false water over the flats west of town. Calder spent those hours bartering for spare cartridges, lamp oil, and a rolled map of Hollow Mess's tunnels. He kept a shade where possible. Whitecliff watchers lingered at every corner now, radios crackling, though they lacked the range to call corporate enforcers until night. He noted their patrol patterns, their lazy arrogance, the way they laughed after whistling at passing girls, as if all was ordinary. Leora remained upstairs in landlady Morven Pike's attic, hidden beneath quilts that smelled of lavender and mothballs. She scrubbed her hands raw until every trace of grave dirt vanished, braided her hair tight so wind could not whip it across her vision, then paced the cramped floor counting boards. Elias once mocked her habit, said she could map any room by footfall alone. She mounted fluidly. Elias taught her to ride before she could swim. And if timing fails, I improvise, you adapt. She smiled despite herself. My brother used to say plans are promises life laughs at. Smart man. Calder swung into saddle. Let's keep life guessing. They rode east under a sky bruised purple. Briar End's clabbered silhouettes dwindled until only the schoolhouse bell tower remained, shining rusty in the last light. Coyotes yipped from distant. Gullies then fell silent as riders approached dotted Widow's Gate, a natural arch of redstone. Calder signaled halt. Voices drifted from the guard shack, two men arguing over cards, coins clinking. Lantern light flickered through warped slats, casting jittery bars across the trail. Calder dismounted, motioned Leora to stay, then slipped into shadow. She waited, nerves taut as piano wire. A minute stretched into 3. Hoof stomp, owl hoot, routine forest noises disguised any muffled sound. Then Calder returned, unhurried. Sleeping dust in their bottle, he said, nodding. They'll wake sore at dawn. Leora bit back questions. Some truths best learned. Later, beyond the gate, the land heaved upward, broken by ravines choked with alder. Moonlight slithered through high clouds, lighting white quartz veins that glittered like knife tips. Leora guided the mare behind Calder's gelding, wary of loose shale. Halfway up they dismounted to lead horses across a narrow ledge. Wind sighed through juniper cracks, whispering perfume of sap and ancient earth. Leora's fingers brushed, stone worn smooth by centuries. She remembered hiking here with Elias last spring, marking petroglyphs half buried in scree. He'd planned to chart them after exposing Whitecliff, said the old stories deserved daylight. The memories swelled her throat. She pressed on. They reached Hollow Mess's plateau near midnight. Pine silhouettes crowded the rim, branches knitting overhead. Calder tethered horses in a sink hollow, then produced a shaded lantern. He unrolled the map, pointed to a cross-hatched square. Survey library sits here, a timber shack over shaft 21. Whitecliff stores engineering logs inside a fireproof safe. I know the combination, of course. He offered a faint grin. 2 sentries patrol an outer ring, clockwise 10-minute loop. We slip between. Leora studied the ink lines, memorized distances. When the moon breaks cloud, we'll have 9 minutes of shadow. Calder raised a brow. You count cycles? When fear empties your pockets, you learn to invest in seconds. Thunder rumbled far south, though no storm threatened. She wondered if Briar End heard it, If storms sometimes rolled underground where dynamite carved veins, they moved single. File through pines, lantern shuddered. Leora's heartbeat matched Calder's boot crunch ahead, steady. Near the shack, kerosene lamps cast yellow pools around the safe-pitched roof. No guards visible. They likely walked the perimeter path. Calder crouched behind an ore cart. I'll cut lamp wires. When dark falls, you sprint to door, code in, collect documents. I hold path. Leora swallowed. If Creed's inside? Shoot, Calder said. Twice if you must. She nodded. Bite of metal chilled her palm as she drew revolver. Calder crept to the lamp poles, nimble as a bobcat. Wire snipped light. Sputtered out. The camp dipped into moon shadow so sudden Leora's breath fogged. She dashed, boots silent on dust. Inside the shack stale heat reeked of oil and ink. Shelves bowed under ledgers. The safe hulked against rear wall. She spun the outer wheel. 11 right, 28 left, 13 right. Tumble clicked. The door swung. Bundles of papers tied with cord the survey records. She stuffed them into oilcloth sacks she'd worn beneath coat. In back of safe, a cigar box bore Elias's initials. She seized it, heart-hammering dot outside a shout arced. Lanterns flared along trail guards returning early. Calder fired once warning. Then the crack of repeating rifles answered. Leora slammed safe. Sprinted for exit. She burst into night as bullets tore bark. Calder ducked behind Orcart, returning fire in measured pops. North Ridge. He barked. She followed, crouched. 2 guards cut them off, rifles leveled. Leora dropped behind slag heap, drew revolver. She inhaled, recalled Elias's lessons. Exhale, squeeze. Her shot clipped nearest guard's thigh, spinning him down. Calder's shot disarmed other without killing. They raced on, lanterns flooded slope behind. More men, too many. Calder veered toward an abandoned adit. Inside. He ordered. The tunnel yawned black. They plunged. Echoes swallowed pursuit noise. After 50 yards, Calder cracked a glow stick green. Light shimmered on damp walls, streaked silver. The tunnel forked. Calder hesitated. Old workings unstable. Footfalls drummed behind. Leora gripped his sleeve. Left spur breaks into ventilation shaft. Elias showed me. They turned left. The passage narrowed until they crawled. Timbers groaned. Dust sifted. Behind, voices cursed. Boots halted at crawl entry. They wouldn't risk. Keep low, Calder urged. Minutes later the passage widened into a vertical shaft wired with a rusted ladder. Leora swung onto rungs, sack teeth, gripped. Calder followed. Midway, ladder bolts shrieked. A rung tore free. Calder's slip caught Leora's ankle. She cried out, gripping ladder. His weight threatened to yank both down. Below, faint metal creak signaled chasing guards, maybe deciding to follow after. All, climb, Calder ordered, releasing her. He dropped to stone floor with a bone-jarring grunt. Calder, go. He yanked revolver, fired upward past her at figures entering shaft. Mouth sparks rained. She reached top, rolled onto pine needle earth, moonlight gilded clearing. She tied rope to stump, dropped end. Grab, she whispered. Gunshots, echoes. Then Calder's hand caught rope. She hauled, muscles burning. He scrambled over rim as ladder finally howled and tore loose, crashing into darkness with screams of guards who had begun climbing. Leora collapsed panting. Calder pressed bandana to bleeding forearm. They shared shaky laugh alive, but hooves drummed distant. Company riders scaled Mesa Road. Calder glanced at Sack. Worth it? She opened cigar box. Inside, wax-sealed letter addressed to Asterisk Inspector. General, Asterisk maps, assay chips, and Elias's signet ring stained crimson. Tears blurred moon. She closed box, jaw set. Worth everything. Below, searchlight swept ridge. Calder rose unsteady. We run canyon route. But they'll follow Dawn. Leora touched Locket. Let them. 5. They descended switchbacks racing Dawn. Once Calder staggered, blood loss muddling steps. Leora looped his arm. I owe you, he muttered. You saved me first. She returned. By sunrise they reached Cottonwood Flats. Their Calder collapsed by a spring. Leora cleaned wound, stitched. Torn flesh with kit from saddlebag. Calder clenched jaw but made no sound. She fed him willow bark tincture and hardtack. He dozed. While he slept, she inspected documents. The survey logs detailed ore thickness, location, grade, irrefutable proof of fraud. The maps overlay payroll, routes and bribery ledgers. Elias had planned a comprehensive expose. She wept silently, not for what was lost, but for the resolve he'd left her. Comment. If you've ever vowed to finish what someone else began. Calder jerked awake near noon. His fever looked mild. Stitches held. Ride by dusk, he insisted. Your fever says otherwise. My code says otherwise. Whitecliff will send Creed once they learn guards failed. At the name Merritt Creed, Leora's pulse kicked. Calder watched her. You want him. I want justice. Justice rarely rides alone. She met his gaze. Then vengeance can hold the reins a while. He nodded slowly. We take these logs to use Marshall in Red Wash, 35 miles. Creed will chase. We pick battleground. She unrolled valley map. The Sunder Narrows Bridge. One way across canyon. Burn it after us, Calder assessed. Narrow deck. 10 riders max abreast. Good choke point. Better trap. He smiled, approving. 6 dusk spilled gold over flats as they rode south. Documents split between saddlebags to hedge risk. Calder's fever abated, but he looked older. Pain lines carving deeper. Leora kept pace, revolver loose. Dust plumes on horizon announced pursuers. At Sunder Narrows, canyon walls plunged 300 feet into shadow where a river hissed unseen. The bridge, a wooden spine built for ore wagons, vibrated when horses stepped on. Calder dismounted. Halfway, hammered spikes between planks, poured lamp oil over supports. Lior, a lit fuse tails tucked under boards. Creed's men cross, sparks catch. And Creed? Calder asked. He'll ride ahead. She unslung Elias's rifle gifted on her 16th birthday. She checked chamber. Wind moaned through canyon. First Whitecliff riders appeared. 5 silhouettes galloping. Merritt Creed led, duster snapping like a black banner, eyes cold blue. He reined at bridgemouth, seeing 2 figures mid-span. Calder stepped forward, badge glinting. Turn back. Railroad law, Creed laughed. Law's whoever owns the tracks, and I own you. He spurred onto bridge. Boards thundered. Leora leveled rifle, breath steady. At 30 yards, Creed recognized her. Little Thane, he called. Wondered if you'd crawl from that grave. She fired. The shot punched Creed's hat, spinning but missed flesh. Creed ducked, returned fire. Bullets whined. Behind him riders surged. Calder lit final fuse with cigar ember. Flames raced along oil-soaked rope. Fall back. Creed shouted, wheeling. But riders bunched. Panic jammed bridge. Liora dropped 2 horses. Screams rose. She and Calder vaulted over side railing onto girders below, scrambling to narrow maintenance beam just as charges blossomed. Light roared skyward. Bridge deck split, raining timber and men into void. Creed's horse skidded on collapsing boards. The outlaw leapt, snagged cable, hung dangling above abyss. Fire licked ropes. Calder drew pistol, but froze too distant. Leora clung to beam, rifle slung. You could taste iron on the wind long before the first rider's silhouette knifed. Across the dawn, the air between Sunder Narrows and Red Wash Canyon had turned dry as parchment, yet somehow it still carried the metallic hush that precedes. Blood being spilled, a hush both Leora Thane and Calder Rye recognized in their bones. They rode straight into it anyway, each heartbeat a hammer nailing the night's memories into living wood. The bridge still smoked behind them, charred ribs, cracking inward until nothing remained but cinders drifting down the cliffs like black snow. Somewhere in that smoking gulf, Merritt Creed had vanished. Whether river, rock, or raw vengeance had claimed him, nobody could yet say, but Leora's gut warned she would smell his cologne of gun oil and peppermint again before this was done. Calder's gelding limped from the ladder shaft tumble, and his bandaged forearm seeped through the gauze, but he kept the pace brutal. 32 miles, he murmured every hour, like a catechism. Evidence in a marshal's hands by noon, or it's rotted meat. Leora answered with a silent nod each time. Words cost oxygen, and she needed every shred of that to hold the saddle. Her own mind chewed on last night's images, the split second when Creed's eyes had found her across the flames, and she'd fired and missed. "I buried your brother alive," the taunt gnawed. Did buried alive mean Elias might still breathe? Or had Creed simply savored cruelty? Hope was flint, spark enough to hurt fingers, not enough to light the way. A jackrabbit bolted across the trail. Calder's gelding shied, then settled under the low hum of his voice. "Easy, boy. Morning ghosts can't bite." He glanced back at Leora. "Storm riders." She followed his gaze. 5 dust pillars marched on their rear horizon. Whitecliff hadn't paused to count casualties. They'd saddled fresh men. Asterisk. Tap that like button if you've ever felt trouble closing in faster than sunrise. Asterisk. Dash asterisk asterisk. 7 leagues to Red Wash asterisk. The sun clawed higher, turning sage into glinting daggers. By mid-morning, the hurt in Calder's stitched shoulder became a drumbeat in his peripheral vision. Fever haze fringed the trail with shimmering ghosts. But every mile closer to Red Wash peeled another layer of doubt from his resolve. Hand the logs to Marshal Trenwith. Telegraph the Inspector General. Expose Whitecliff. Protect Leora. Simple chain of steps if none broke. He knew better. Chains always break at the rivet you can't see. They reached the petrified flats, an ancient riverbed littered with stone trunks and amber shards, like a forest flash-frozen mid-grown. The route offered no cover. Calder re-rigged the packs, hiding half the documents beneath a hollow log-off trail. "If they take one of us," he said, "the other still carries proof." Elias would approve, Leora agreed, sliding the cigar box into her duster's breast pocket where body heat warmed the wax seal. "HOOFB. ATS" echoed through the flats. The pursuit had halved the gap. A rifle cracked round whistled high. "Sparking stone," Calder hissed. "They'll push mounts to lather, catch us in 10. He scanned the petrified trunks, eyeing formations. "We buy 15 instead." They dismounted, slapped their horses free toward a distant arroyo, then crouched among stone columns that leaned like drunken giants. Calder unpacked 2 dynamite sticks scavenged from hollow mesa. He lashed them around a decayed stump bridging a narrow defile. "Pressure trip," he explained, looping wire to a bent horseshoe spike. "Weight of first horse breaks the pin." Leora's brows climbed. "Thought you were done killing." "Triple break legs, not lives," he muttered. "Noise and chaos, that's all." They doubled back on foot, circling behind a ridge. From there they watched the Whitecliff outriders thunder into the choke. The lead gelding snapped the pin, dynamite roared. Shards of stone sleeted across the rider saddles upended. Men flung. Cries echoed. 2 horses bolted riderless. The rest pulled rein, regrouping. Calder signaled go. They sprinted downslope where their mounts awaited. Rein snagged on a mesquite branch exactly where he'd planned. Back in the saddle, they angled southeast for Red Wash. Whitecliff's temper would burn time. They couldn't spare. 5 leagues heat and dust blurred the horizon into a wavering mirage. Leora's lips cracked. She sipped from the canteen sparingly. The valley before Red Wash spread like a skillet. No water, no shade, just railroad grades and telegraph poles marching into the shimmer. Somewhere out there, Marshal Trenwith's jurisdiction began. Calder's voice rasped behind her. Change of plan. We reach the tracks, flag down the midday ore train, ride steel the last miles. Conductor won't board outlaws, she warned. I'll flash the badge Kinnick loaned. Rails love paperwork. Behind, gunfire sputtered pursuers. Regained saddles. Dust tails rose again. Leora urged the chestnut faster. Her thigh cramped, but adrenaline whipped muscle into steel. They vaulted an erosion ditch, hooves clattering on shale. The sound carried. Vultures rose from a carcass, wheeling overhead as if drawn by future blood. A telegraph pole loomed. Beyond it, parallel lines of iron gleamed. The noon freight would pass within minutes. Plumes smudged the horizon, planktic. Thrumming filled the silence. Calder unspooled a crimson kerchief, tied it to his rifle barrel, and stood in stirrups waving as the locomotive thundered nearer. At first the engineer leaned on the whistle warning, but the badge's glint softened resolve. The train squealed, slows slowed, drawing sparks. They galloped alongside a coal tender. Calder vaulted first, grasping the ladder rung with good arm. Pain ripped across stitches, but he scrambled over. He hauled Leora's rein so she, too, could leap onto the tender deck. Their horses veered off riderless, vanishing into brush. A brakeman gaped, open-mouthed. Calder flashed badge. Deputy on urgent federal business. He barked, "The man." Stammered. "Tracks are private company property, then Bill Washington." Calder cut, shoving past. They clambered across swaying cars until they found space between zinc crates. Leora crouched, heart banging. Below, the landscape blurred at 40 miles an hour. Wadecliff riders reached the rails too late. They reined up, cursing. Calder collapsed against crates, blood saturating his sleeve anew. Fever brightened his eyes. Leora ripped spare bandage, pressed hard. He gritted a smile. "Worth 10 minutes." She shook her head. "Worth your life?" He coughed a chuckle. "Lives spend themselves whether we pay attention or not." Hit subscribe if you've ever gambled everything on minutes that felt like years. Asterisk, asterisk. Red wash, asterisk, asterisk. The mining town sprawled along the canyon lip, red rock terraces riddled with track spurs. Locomotives belched where smelters roared day and night. Brothels and assay offices jostled shoulder to shoulder above the gorge. The train hissed into the main yard. Calder and Leora disembarked before officials noticed. Calder's fever wobbled him. She steadied his steps toward the marshal's brick office near the courthouse. Inside, fans creaked overhead. Marshal Silas Trenwith, tall, silver-haired, blue-eyed and immaculate, peered from behind stacks of warrants. His cufflinks gleamed small hammers over scales of justice. Calder saluted with the borrowed tin. Deputy Calder Rye, temporary commission out of Briar End, critical evidence of corporate fraud. Trenwith's eyes flicked over bandages, dust, the bulging oilcloth. "Sit," he barked, voice refined East Coast. "Tell me quick." While Calder explained, Leora unpacked survey logs, maps, ledger excerpts. Trenwith leafed through pages, eyebrows rising. "If this stands, Wadecliff's charter folds and a dozen board members swing. Assuming chain of custody stays clean until circuit judge." Calder's voice trembled fatigue. "Need telegraph to Inspector General, secure storage for originals." Trenwith rang a bell. A clerk entered, took dictation for the wire, then vanished. Leora exhaled first breath of relief since Elias disappeared. Marshal locked documents into an iron safe. "You did right," he said. But relief lasted one heartbeat. Trenwith tipped his head toward the corridor. Boots approached, heavy, measured. In step, the door swung open, admitting 3 men. A U.S. deputy marshal named Combs, a Pinkerton wearing diamond stick pin, and Merritt Creed alive, hatless, right arm in sling but grin intact. Cold flooded Leora's stomach. Combs produced a folded writ. By order of Territorial Court, I assume custody of evidence pertaining to Whitecliff Mineral Co. Marshal Trenwith, you are relieved pending inquiry. Trenwith's face hardened, but he did not challenge. Pinkerton stepped forward. Private. Contract with Department of Interior. Will ensure impartial audit. Leora surged. He is Whitecliff. She jabbed Creed's chest. He buried my brother. Pinkerton's lip curled. Ma'am, that is slander. Creed's grin widened. His bruised cheek and ash-specked coat testified to the bridge fall, yet his eyes danced. Told you I'd crawl from hell. He leaned. Near her ear. Dead men don't need sisters. Calder's hand dropped to his revolver, but Combs cocked shotgun. Marshal Trenwith intervened. Deputy Rye, stand down. Court orders binding. Calder's jaw knotted. Fever and fury blurred his vision, but he let his gun hand fall. Combs yanked the safe key from Trenwith, unlocked steel door, and hefted boxes out. Pinkerton signed the chain of custody form. Smirking. Creed faced Leora. Seems your crusade ends at no place to end after all. Tears threatened, but did not fall. Elias lives, she whispered. Creed stilled. What? I heard it in your taunt. You left him breathing. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, then he masked it. You'll never find him. And now your proof rides east under guard you can't imagine buying. Calder steadied himself against desk, swaying. If you're so sure, why shake? Calder wavered, then collapsed. Blood pooled fresh through linen. Leora caught him, lowering to chair. Trenwith knelt, peeled back bandage. Stitches popped. Infections courting. He called for doctor. Calder's eyes barely focused. You. Go, he rasped. Not leaving, she countered. Find Elias, he insisted. Creed will hide him deeper after today. I'll only slow you now. Tears near again. Can't, not alone. Trenwith straightened. You won't be. I'll second men once I confirm wire receipt. But Creed's got half the Pinkertons in his waistcoat. Calder seized Leora's hand. Remember count boards, he whispered, delirious. She managed a laugh-sob. Measure rooms by footsteps, Elias taught me. Measure hearts the same, Calder murmured, eyes closing. Doctor burst in with iodine and catgut. Trenwith ushered Leora out. He'll live, the marshal said. But he needs 48 hours. Outside, afternoon sun scorched marble steps. Leora's shadow stretched long ahead like a road. Somewhere beyond smelter smoke, Merritt Creed hauled her brother's future into darkness. She inhaled coal, tinged air until lungs burned, then exhaled fear. Marshal, I need a horse and a map of every Whitecliff property within 50 miles. Trenwith studied her, a young woman, dust-caked, eyes bright as forged steel. He nodded once. Follow me. The wheel turns. Merritt Creed's private railcar clattered east behind a two-engine consist. Inside, curtains shut out daylight while Creed paced between stacked evidence crates. Pinkerton Shaw smoked near a mahogany desk. She said, "The brother lives," Creed muttered. "Bluff or leak?" Shaw exhaled smoke rings. "Ate your nerves, seems. Thought you buried all witnesses." Creed's gaze chilled. "I bury problems, not always bodies. Elias knew a ventilation run I missed. Days of oxygen down there. We only left him to sweat." Shaw shrugged. "If he claws out, he'll still." "Need proof." Creed opened cigar case, found hand shaking. He stilled it. "Send word to Merritt Gulch. Double guards. If Elias surfaces, shoot the air he breathes." Shaw nodded. Tapped telegram key. Train whistle shrieked. Another bridge upcoming. Creed glanced through curtains at sheer canyon walls streaking by. Fire-scorched boards of Sunder Narrows flashed in his mind. Fear sharpened to hate nightfall strategies in Red Wash. Marshal Trenwith gathered intel, a courier reported. Heavy freight loaded at Hollow Mesa bound for Whitecliff's main refinery near Dillon. The freight would pass through Merritt Gulch Yard by dawn, and Pinkertons were diverting resources there. Trenwith spread a rail map before Leora. If they expect attack, they shore up the gulch. Then I won't attack, Leora said. She pointed to a spur line disused leading into collapsed tunnel number 9. I'll infiltrate. Alone, Calder taught me adapt, and Elias taught me maps. Trenwith rubbed temples. I can't stop you, but I can lend gear. He handed her a pocket telegraph field device that clicked code via conductive ground stakes. Transmit. If you secure your brother, I'll ride with deputies on your signal. She accepted. Heart thundering. At livery, she chose a black mare with white blaze. As she tightened cinch, Calder's words echoed. Measure hearts the same, she whispered. Into dusk, hold on, Elias. She rode out Westgate under rising stars. Asterisk drop a in chat if you'd ride into hell to save family Merritt Gulch. Past midnight the gulch glimmered with furnace glow. Ore chutes clanged and floodlights swept yard. Barracks housed 30 guards, searchlights mounted on rail cranes. The main ventilation shaft where Creed had lost Elias sat half hidden by slag heaps. Leora tethered Mare in Pinnon Thicket, then crawled the abandoned spur. Rats scattered. She found tunnel number 9 entrance caved in but crawlable. She wriggled, scraping knuckles bloody, recalling the ladder shaft horror. Her revolver snagged rock. She cursed softly but pressed on. Inside, the tunnel opened into a dusty chamber lit only by faint shimmer from distant furnace vents, enough to make out ore carts and track switches. Echoes magnified each breath. She withdrew a compass and traced bearings to the ventilation run Elias mapped if he still lived. He'd retreat there. Cooler air, auriferous water seeped. Steps approached 2 voices. She slipped behind lead pipes. Guards passed, joking about hazard pay and the coffin kid downstairs. Her pulse pounded. Coffin kid, Elias. She followed at distance until they reached a hoist cage. One guard descended. The other walked on. Leora waited, then crept to cage controls. She scanned diagram safety dog lever, locked with padlock. She jimmied it with Elias's ring-perfect pick size. The pad popped. She slid into cage, shut gate, released brake. The platform groaned, lowering into darkness. She counted timbers 30. 40 transitioned to quartz seam. A faint glow bloomed below. The cage thudded down. Torches guttered along a service drift. Silence heavy. She advanced, revolver raised. A cough echoed. She spun toward a side alcove. There, slumped against a braced wall, lay a gaunt figure in ragged miner's jacket. Elias Thane, alive, wrists chafed by rope but face lighting when he saw her. Leora? He croaked. She dropped to knees, cutting bonds, tears streaking dust. I thought, Creed said. No time, Elias whispered. Guard comes every hour with water. We have minutes. Can you walk? He struggled up thin, but determined. Yes, they hurried to cage. Above, metal clanged. The guard returning early. Leora cursed shifted plan. She guided Elias down adjacent drift to alternate ladder. Upwards 50 feet, then into his shaft she hoped still clear. Mid-climb, bootsteps clattered on ladder above another. Guard! They froze. Leora aimed upward into black. Metal screeched. A lantern appeared. She fired. Sparks showered. The guard yelped, losing grip, tumbling past them into abyss with distant thud. Elias gasped. Leora tugged him upward faster. At last a ventilation grate barred exit. She wrenched it free, rusted, then pushed Elias into night air atop a slag pile overlooking yard. Searchlights swept below, but none yet scanned up. They crawled to shadow of crane gantry. Sirens wailed alarm discovered body. Elias eyed her, voice rough. Documents? Creed seized them, but the telegraph copy still sits in red wash. He smiled despite bloodied lips. Then let's... Give them something new to worry about. He explained quickly. Furnace gas line runs under crane track overpressured. Rupture it, scorch yard, delay pursuit. She hesitated. Workers could die. No night shift near line. Just guards, she swallowed. All right, they sneaked to valve house. Elias set spanner while Leora watched. Footsteps neared Creed's lieutenant, Shaw, flanked by 2 guards. Shaw hailed, "You there!" Leora spun, gun drawn. Shaw raised rifle. Standoff. Elias wrenched. Valve gas hissed. Shaw fired. Bullet clipped pipe, sparks igniting plume. Flame whooshed sky high. Guards dove. Leora seized Elias, sprinted as fire chased line toward storage tank. They dived behind steel hopper as tank erupted, mushrooming orange. Shockwave flattened bunks. Sirens screamed anew. Leora hauled Elias toward perimeter fence. Spotlights flashed. Erratic. Chaos erupted. At fence, she cut wire, shoved him through. Hoof beats beyond Marshal Trenwith with posse. He'd ridden early, but as they mounted deputies' horses, a lone figure emerged from smoke. Merritt Creed, coat aflame at hem, eyes blazing. He lifted a long-range revolver and fired. The bullet struck Trenwith's horse, dropping animal and Marshal beneath. Leora wheeled, raised gun, but Creed vanished into fire gut. Deputies dragged Trenwith clear, leg broken. He waved them on. Go, end this. Leora spurred after Creed. Into burning yard, Elias clinging behind. Flames roared under crane's shadows twisted. Creed's silhouette darted toward ore conveyor. She chased, gunfire spitting both ways. Creed reached the conveyor motor, ripped lever. Chain clattered, then lurched, flinging molten slag toward them. Leora veered. Glowing stones pelted ground, igniting tarps. Elias pointed. Boiler catwalk leads to railcar spur his exit. They clambered stairs amid heat that singed lungs. Above, catwalk buckled, plates rattling below boots. Creed emerged ahead, crossing toward his private car coupled to rescue engine. He turned, saw them, sprinted. Leora sighted, fired miss. Creed vaulted onto car roof as engine chugged. He aimed. Back, pistol clicked empty. He cursed, dropped into car. Liora dashed, leapt onto last flat car just as train jerked forward. Elias tossed her spare rounds. She reloaded while crawling rooftop toward Creed's car. Flames lit the yard like dawn turned sinister. Trenched. Beams collapsed, sending sparks waterfalling. The rescue engine gathered speed. Gravity stole breath before fear could. The world spun into black-blue. Whirl as Leora Thane and her brother plummeted from the trestle embers from the burning rail car, raining like angry stars above their twisting silhouettes. For 3 heartbeats. She was weightless, nothing but pulse and wind. 4th heartbeat. The hard slap of chilled night air flattened her coat against ribs. 5th. The canyon floor surged upward, jagged with shale and mesquite, and she thought asterisk, this is how endings. Sound asterisk. Yet fate, that fickle coin forever flipping between tragedy and near, mischose the latter. A half-hidden service chute jutted from the canyon wall, obsolete timber scaffold still clinging to its mouth. Leora's boots clipped a cross brace, momentum ripping splinters. Slowing descent before gravity reclaimed her in a bone-jarring tumble down a scree slope blanketed by flood-deposited sand. She rolled twice, lungs punching out the last of her scream, then lay stunned, staring up at sparks tumbling like meteors across the slice of star-stained sky. Elias landed seconds later, mercifully into the same drift. Sand collapsed around his shoulders with a muffled hump. He groaned, slapped dust from his face, then reached across the collapse to grasp her wrist. Still with me? He rasped through grit. Her reply was a nod, small but alive. Pain pulsed along her hip where Pinkerton Shaw's bullet had grazed, and her right elbow shrieked when she flexed, but nothing felt broken. Survival could hurt like blazes and still count as victory. Asterisk. Hit the like button if you've ever walked away bruised but unbroken. For a full minute they lay panting among mesquite and sand while above. The rescue engine rumbled across the trestle bearing the dead body of Merritt Creed and whatever secrets flaming within his private car. Then darkness folded over the canyon like shroud. The iron monster's thunder receded east, leaving only wind sighing around boulders and the hiss of dying embers drifting from the bridges torched. Skeleton. Elias managed to sit, shadows sculpted hollows beneath his cheekbones. Captivity had stripped him to sinew and stubborn spark. "Where's your revolver?" Leora patted the sand. "Gone lost in tumble." Knife too. She still had the field telegraph slung across her back, miraculously uncrushed, and the cigar box of Elias's evidence in her inside pocket. "Weapons or not, we need distance before Shaw searches ravine." Elias nodded. "South wall holds. An old water access tunnel. Supply boilers, earlier than Whitecliff. If it hasn't collapsed, we can crawl clear of yard patrols." He started to stand, swayed. Leora looped an arm around his waist, steadied him, and together they limped toward moonlit shadows at canyon base. Every step ground grit into her grazed flesh, but she kept breaths. Even Calder's lesson, asterisk pain is data. Learn its language, don't let it dictate yours. Asterisk. They skirted skeletal cottonwoods lining a seasonal wash, staying beneath overhangs where owl shadows fluttered. Somewhere behind, at trestle elevation, a lantern winked search party. Voices floated, curses, orders, the metallic CHK cuff a lever rifle. Shaw was hunting. The brothers and sister pressed on. A rusted pipe jutted from rock 20 feet up a vein once channeling water to Merritt Gulch's first boiler house decades ago. Its stair scaffold had rotted away, but erosive shelves offered handholds. Leora boosted Elias, then climbed herself. Inside, the pipe's throat smelled of wet rust and copper. They wormed 30 yards through pitch before emerging into a narrow service gallery. Moisture dripped from mineral teeth overhead. Crickets chirped, louder with each cautious step until gallery cracked into a natural karst chamber, draped with flowstone curtains. Elias slumped against limestone, chest heaving. Leora traced quick perimeter by lantern spill from her pocket. Strike light. 1 stalagmite cluster, 2 dead-end crawls, 1 downward fissure exhaling cool, damp air. "This drops into Haggard Wash," Elias whispered. "We follow water. It merges with Apache Draw 5 miles east. Marshall Trenwith's men will comb Main Road north. We can rendezvous at Clearwater Crossing if we signal by dawn," she said, pulling the pocket telegraph. Ground stakes could transmit half a mile along mineral substrate if she found a copper vein near surface. But the earth above rumbled again, tram carts screeching along rails as Whitecliff reinforcements flooded yard. Searchlight beams sliced canyon walls. Barking dogs joined chorus. They had maybe minutes before hounds scented the water tunnel. Lior packed telegraph and shouldered Elias. They squeezed into fissure. Cool current brushed cheeks as they crawled downward on bellies, boots scraping calcite. The slot tightened, then abruptly widened into an under-river crawl channel filled ankle-deep with trickling spring water. They waded fast, guided by distant hollow roar where the cave opened into open night. Moonset kissed the horizon when they surfaced at the wash. Just 2 ragged silhouettes stumbling from drainage culvert into waxen starlight. Shirakawa reeds rustled as coyotes yipped sentinel warnings along ridges. Elias exhaled in relief. Leora allowed herself 1 heartbeat of the same before urgency reclaimed her chest. "We must put 12 miles between us and Gulch before daylight. Shaw will circle troopers downriver," Elias nodded grimly. "There's an abandoned telegraph repeater at Willowscree. Good vantage. We can broadcast." They turned downstream slow fragments of 2 lives stitched to single purpose: survival. Sand sucked at boots, and slump banks forced them to wade waist deep at bends. By the 3rd mile, dawn paled the east. Crimson minted across sandstone towers. At low wash bank, they found a weather-beaten trooper's horse, picketed behind scrub rider, dead from exploded shrapnel earlier, body half buried by silt. Leora's stomach twisted, yet gratitude surfaced. Providence sometimes dealt grim hands. They looted rifle from saddle scabbard Winchester 73+, a half-full canteen, and jerky pouch. Elias drank greedily, coughed but regained color. They mounted double and urged the nervous Mare into loping trot east. Asterisk. Drop a if you've ever run toward sunrise, knowing darkness was still on your heels. Asterisk. Mid-morning heat crushed sage into bitter perfume when they reached Willow Scree, a tumble of quartzite shards sloping toward a vantage ridge. At its crest, the skeletal frame of a repeater shack leaned, antenna mast shattered by past lightning but ground cable likely intact. Inside, dust-coated keys and coil, but field telegraph could piggyback if cable still contacted main line below. Elias connected stakes, tapped power coil, then signaled with measured clicks. CQ. Marshall Red Wash Leora Thane with evidence need extraction at Clearwater Shin by sunset. Static hissed, seconds stretched, then faint. Roger posse. En route hold and signal at dusk, relief thin but present. Leora sagged against wall. Elias slung rifle, stared west. Dust column climbed horizon. Riders. Shaw, he guessed. We have hours before posse and maybe half before Pinkertons. Then, we lead Shaw away from Clearwater, she decided. Draw him uphill into Banshee Crags. Nobody rides that maze but mountain goats. Sharp plan. Elias coughed, spat copper-tinged phlegm. Hope my lungs agree. They abandoned repeater, covered tracks with juniper fronds, then guided. Mare northeast along shale ridges. Heat shimmer distorted distance. At times dust plumes split 2 groups, maybe 3. Whitecliff had unleashed full wrath. By noon, they reached Banshee Crags, a labyrinth of towering hoodoos, carved by eons into gargoyles. Narrow defiles echoed like wind organs. One wrong turn dead-ended above 50-foot drops. But Leora's childhood hikes with Elias had mapped these folds. They threaded secret goat paths, leading Mare patiently. At the spine of a Finn's array, they found a crevice cave where spring seep pooled, a rare water pocket. Leora planned to stash Elias here. Well, she scouted, but he refused. Twin targets split their aim, he argued. We finish this together. Footsteps cracked stone nearby. Advance scouts. They hid behind column. 2 men picking through draw below, rifles glinting. Leora sighted with Winchester, but Elias signaled patience. The scouts passed under natural arch. She fired, then a warning ricochet showering shale. Echoes multiplied. Horses spooked, men ducked. She fired again, kicking dust at their heels. They scrambled out, shouting for main party. Good, she muttered. Now they think we're guarding something here. It worked. Within an hour, 15 Pinkertons and hired guns swarmed Canyon Bowl, trying to triangulate shooter. Leora and Elias ghosted along higher ledges, using goat path to flank. Twice bullets zipped dangerously close, but Crags deflected lines of sight. Shaw himself rode into basin just after sun zenith, coat smudged by fire, eyes bloodshot. Fan out. His bark echoed. Find the Thane rats. Dead or dying, I want. That cigar box. Leora's fist tightened on stock. How had he known about box? Creed obviously briefed him. Shaw dismounted below. A balancing rock massive boulder, perched upon pedestal, the width of a barrel. He consulted pocket compass, traced boot prints. His men spread. Elias whispered. That pedestal fracture line narrow. Undermine support, rock drops. She measured slope. Yes. A single well-placed rifle shot at Fisher could topple boulder. Right where Shaw stood. But moral calculus churned killing in cold blood. Calder's voice echoed, difference between killer and murderer. Yet Shaw had already killed, would again. Refused surrender. She chambered round, exhaled. Finger tightened. A shout erupted behind them. Another patrol cresting rim sooner than expected. Gunfire spat chips around their perch. Elias and Leora ducked. Her shot went wild, pinging harmlessly off rock face. Patrol bullets hammered pedestal inadvertently. Leora peaked slope looked forgiving, but once down they'd be trapped in blind ravine. Gunmen advanced. Shaw limped nearer, levering rifle with left arm. Eyes blazing hate through dust veil. She threw telegraph stake like spear caught first. Pursuer in shin, buying seconds. Then she grabbed Elias's hand. Hold breath. They slid feet first into chimney. Stone scraped leather, tore sleeves, but momentum carried them onto sand dune at base. Sore but whole, they scrambled deeper. Found a low tunnel exit leading out onto desert plateau south of Crags. But the Mar, they'd left her above. No mount now, and desert heat hammered midday. Upslope behind, Shaw cursed but couldn't follow. They had collapsed entry with slide of loose stone. For now, spared, comment if you've ever felt victory measured in inches and heartbeats. The plateau was a moonscape of cracked clay and whistling wind. Clearwater Crossing lay 6 miles southeast, across open plain. Without horse, they risked dehydration, but creek runoff network promised patches of seep. They trudged, sharing sips, silent except for rasp of boots. Late afternoon painted buttes. Copper when dust clouds flared behind Shaw again. He'd found alternate route and stolen fresh horses, 3 riders. Gap closing slow but steady. Leora's muscles ached, but desert offered weapon, mirages and gullies. She led Elias into shallow. Arroyo snaking east. At its bend a collapsed culvert formed arch of concrete. They hid inside as riders passed above. When hoofbeats faded, they emerged, angled crosswind to confuse tracks, then doubled back to creek corridor where cottonwoods whispered. Their miracle. Trenwith's posse flag fluttered from ridge scouts. Ahead of schedule, Leora waved. 2 deputies rode down, revolvers raised until they recognized Thane's siblings. Marshall sent us early healed enough to ride. Calder too insisted. Her heart stuttered. Calder's here? They guided her to a makeshift camp hidden in Cottonwood Grove. Calder Rye sat propped against saddle, sling replaced by fresh bandages, eyes fever, shadowed yet resolute. He tried to stand when he saw Leora, but pain pinned him. She knelt, brushed hair from his brow. For a heartbeat words failed both. Then Calder simply asked, "Worth it?" She placed cigar box in his good hand. "Worth everything." He nodded, but his gaze drifted over her wounded hip and Elias's gaunt form. "Creed?" "Finished," Elias answered. "But Shaw hunts." As if on cue, a rifle cracked. A deputy guarding perimeter fell with scream. Chaos erupted. Shaw's trio burst into camp, gunfire blazing. Calder rolled, dragging Leora behind wagon. "He never quits," Calder rasped. Loading his Colt with left hand. Elias snatched deputy's fallen carbine, snapped off shots. One Pinkerton toppled. Shaw rode in circles, firing then veering behind trees. Coyote tactics. Deputies returned fire, but he stayed mobile. Calder whispered to Leora, "Can you run hip?" "Enough. Flank is blind. I'll draw." She nodded. Crawled toward creek bed. Elias provided covering fire. Calder shoved wagon lantern under crate, then slipped opposite side. Shaw, seeing lantern glow, fired repeatedly. Glasses shattered. Sparks ignited wagon tarp. Lior, a circled through willows. Shaw's stallion reared as she emerged behind, but before she could fire, her hip gave, stance faltered, shot went wide. Shaw pivoted, leveled pistol. Calder shouted, drawing Shaw's eye. Fired miss. Shaw shot back bullet, punched Calder's slinged shoulder, spinning him down. Leora screamed, fired again, but chamber empty. Shaw dismounted, stalked Calder, revulsion twisting his scarred face. Shadow's pet. Should have bled to death first night. He raised pistol for coup de grace, and Elias tackled him from side, carbine used as spear. The two crashed into creek shallows, water splashing crimson. Pistol skidded away. They grappled, Shaw stronger, punched Elias twice, forced him under. Liara limped toward them. Shaw saw, lunged for fallen. Pistol. Liara hauled carbine but empty. No bullet left anywhere. She hurled gun struck Shaw's wounded shoulder. He roared but grabbed pistol, turned click empty. Liara had earlier fired his last round overhead. Shaw snarled, tossed pistol, drew boot knife. Charged Calder, bleeding yet conscious. Reached for Colt but gun jammed with creek silt. He hurled. It like hammer hit Shaw's temple, staggering him. Elias burst from water, gasping. Together siblings rushed. Elias wrestled knife arm, Liara punched throat. Shaw thrashed like maddened bull. It ended when Calder, vision blurring, grabbed lantern shards still flaming. Plunged glass into Shaw's duster. Oil ignited. Shaw screamed, rolling but tarp edges caught, entangling him. Deputies closed but heat forced retreat. In seconds, Shaw became living torch stumbling into creek where water hissed to steam. He collapsed face down, motionless. Silence washed grove save crackle of burning tarp and Calder's ragged breaths. Deputies stamped out flames. Liara knelt by Calder, tears mixing with creek splash. "Stay with me," he smiled wanly. "Shadow doesn't quit either." Marshal Trenwith rode in minutes later, legs still splinted, but fury lending speed. Surveying. Carnage, he dismounted. "Are we finished?" Elias held up box. "For the fraud, yes. For my town Briar End, they'll need proof of Creed's other crimes." Trenwith nodded. "We'll collect sworn depositions. Territory court can't ignore surviving free men." Calder tried to stand again. Deputies helped. He faced Liara. Voice raspy, "Your fight's now in court, mine's to testify. But we haven't found rest for your shallow grave." Liara looked southeast where canyon cut horizon. Briar End's valley beckoned. "We bury Elias's fear first. Then we honor the ones still missing." A wind rose, carrying scent of rain monsoon teased desert. Before she could speak further, a deputy sprinted from ridge, eyes wide. Locomotive on horizon, Whitecliff bringing 50 men. Liara swore under breath. Trenwith's posse numbered 12, 2 wounded. Calder barely stood. Tonight they would fight outnumbered under storm-lit sky or flee and risk losing the hard won. Evidence again. Calder's gaze met hers. "Your call." Thunder cracked, and the sky above them opened with the first fat raindrops as headlights of the iron behemoth appeared around the bend. Asterisk. Drop a if you've ever felt the storm break at the worst possible moment. And if this story keeps your pulse racing, make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow's chapter charges straight into the flood. Asterisk. Moment. That single shard of time splintered under the scream of train whistles barreling around the bend. Under thunder's rebuttal cracking through clouds. Under the sharp inhale of every soul in Clearwater Grove who knew the fragile line between living and dying was about to snap. Rain burst in sudden, pelting sheets, turning dust to dark paste, drumming on rifle stocks, smearing blood trails, and quenching the last embers of the tarp fire where Shaw's corpse lay half submerged. Lightning laced the sky, illuminating the oncoming locomotive, an iron serpent hauling 3 boxcars, a gondola crammed with riders, and a final flat car on which sat a swiveling Gatling cannon shielded beneath oilcloth. Liara. Thane tasted copper in the rain, the taste of fear sharpened into purpose. She stood over Calder, wry, slumped but conscious, while Marshal Trenwith's deputies scrambled to form a ragged perimeter among the cottonwoods. Elias, despite raw lungs, broke open cartridge boxes, shaking water from brass rounds, and passing then down the firing line. They had 30 minutes of ammunition, maybe less, and no heavy guns out lightning again. The locomotive's cow catcher glinted, slicing into the flooded creek ford. 50 mounted riders fanned around its flanks, cloaks snapping. On the boxcar roofs, silhouettes shouldered repeaters. Whitecliff had emptied coffers to end this once, and for all Calder coughed through pain, voice a rough whisper. If they cross the grove, we're finished. Need to stall them here until dawn, until Trenwith's circuit authority arrives. Leora knelt. You can barely grip a pistol. He managed a wry half-smile. Lucky for me, I still aim straighter than the average mercenary in a thunderstorm. But she saw his skin ash pale, blood leaking anew beneath fresh bandage. She gripped his hand. If your strength fails, then you lead, he interrupted, eyes flint under rain. This was always your story, Leora. I'm just the notch mark showing how far you've come. Dropeth if you've ever stood up because quitting meant someone else would fall. Asterisk, asterisk. The first volley, asterisk, asterisk. The train screeched to a halt 50 yards out, iron wheels sparking against wet rail. Its whistle wailed like a dying elk, part intimidation, part signal. From the gondola, the tarp flew back, revealing the Gatling. 2 burly gunners cranked elevation. Behind them, a supervisor duster embroidered with company crest raised a speaking trumpet. Leora Thane. The amplified voice cracked over rain. Elias Thane, Marshal Silas Trenwith. You have exactly 3 minutes to surrender yourselves and the stolen property. Lay down arms, step into the open, and you will stand trial in Carson City. Resist, and this grove becomes your grave. Marshal Trenwith stepped to tree line, splint visible beneath coat, his own trumpet borrowed from wagon. Under territorial statute, I declare your warrant fraudulent. Withdraw or face lawful gunfire. The supervisor's laughter carried. Law paid its utility bill, and we bought it, he signaled. The Gatling began its terrible spin, brass barrels whirring up to lethal tempo. Leora sprang. Down! She shouted. Deputies hit mud as the gun loosed a storm of lead, chewing cottonwood trunks into splinters. Sap exploded like white blood. Trenwith dove behind a fallen log as bullets shredded the trumpet, turning it into ragged tin. Maelstrom Leora crawled to Calder. Grove won't hold, she yelled over the roar. Need cover, the Gatling can't angle. He nodded toward Creek Bluff. A sandstone overhang the gun's depression couldn't reach. Pull everyone back in stages. She sprinted along line, slapping shoulders. Deputies broke contact in leapfrog pairs, firing covering shots. Rain thickened into sheets, visibility dropping to 20 yards. Good for them. Bad for the Gatling, which sputtered to lull, barrels steaming. The gun crew cursed, wiped lenses. Elias dragged cartridge crates across mud, leaving gouges. Leora helped, shoulders screaming. When the last crate cleared the cottonwood edge, Calder, leaning on Deputy Hart's shoulder, fired 3 rapid shots. At the locomotive cab. One struck the boiler's side, a ricochet showering sparks through rain like orange fireflies, enough to spook the engineer. The train belched steam, releasing pressure. The Gatling crew shouted in panic, fearing an explosion, and ceased firing. Deputies fell back to bluff, 30 yards uphill, taking positions among natural niches. For a moment the grove was silent except rain's hiss on shredded leaves. Asterisk. Smash that like if you've ever had to pivot plans mid-disaster. Asterisk, asterisk. Battle beneath the overhang. Asterisk, asterisk. Whitecliff riders advanced into grove, horses splashing through rising creek. They carried storm lanterns tinted red, each bobbing like a malevolent will-wisp. Leora counted 30 intact after earlier losses, plus a dozen footmen flanking with pikes rigged bayonet style for close quarters. The Gatling, repositioning on the flat car, resumed clack-clack bursts, sweeping lower portion of bluff but still too high to rake alcoves. Deputy Hart, Caldwell, and Cho set overlapping fields of fire. Trenwith knelt behind basalt shelf, capping. Each shot with measured breathe. Calder settled into gap beside Leora. Pain glazed his eyes, yet his one good arm drew. Fired, recocked like a metronome. Rain turned flash flood. Creek overflowed banks, water swirling around locomotive's wheels. Some Whitecliff horses balked, thrown into rears. Leora seized chance, signaled Caldwell. Together they fired at the nearest lantern cluster. One shattered, plunging 3 riders into darkness. Frightened horses veered, colliding into footmen. Chaos. Lightning revealed Whitecliff supervisor rallying at front, thin man with white gloves. Face skeletal. Conrad Vale, legend said, an ex-artillery captain who enjoyed the calculus of living targets. He pointed sword cane toward Bluff, barked orders. 2 squads dismounted and slogged uphill under covering Gatling arcs. Lead hissed. Deputies returned volley. Men fell on both sides. Leora's Winchester jammed. She cursed, slapped receiver. Cleared stovepipe, resumed. A bullet grazed her collar. Hot sting, cloth torn. She tasted rain run down neck, not knowing if blood or water. Elias, position adjacent, wheezed but kept feed belt running for Caldwell's repeater. When Caldwell took a round through calf, Elias slid in, firing though recoil hammered bruised. Ribs. Thunder roared hard enough to shake earth. A cottonwood half sawn by Gatling toppled across creek, smashing 2 supply mules. The animal's screams rose above gunfire until drowned by water. The Gatling jammed wet belts misfeed. Vale cursed, ordered crew to swap barrel assemblies. Leora saw window. Flood them, she shouted to Elias. He nodded, understanding. If they could breach train's tender and wash boiler fire, locomotive would scald crew, stall gun. She grabbed 2 dynamite sticks remaining from Calder's stash. Sealed fuses under waxcloth. Need thrower, she told Calder. He smiled despite pallor. Still got pitching arm. Deputy Cho provided match. Calder lit fuse, counted 2, 3, then rose enough to hurl bundle in high arc over creek. Lightning flashed dynamite. Silhouette spinning. It landed square in coal tender. Seconds ticked. Whitecliff gunner spotted, reached but blast ripped tender wall, sending slurry of coal and boiling water geysering. Scalding steam engulfed boxcar deck. Gatling crew shrieked, flesh blistering. Gun fell silent. Deputies cheered until Vale regrouped. Footmen shouting bayonet line. 20 stormed up Bluff behind steel shields scavenged from boxcar sides. Marshy ground sucked boots, still they came. Leora and Trenwith poured fire, but shield line absorbed. At 10 yards, Vale signaled Pike. Thrust. Cho lobbed kerosene flask lit with lantern wick. The bottle shattered on foremost shield. Flames spidered across pitch-soaked wood. Rain sputtered but flame clung, licking up arms of 2 pikemen. They dropped shields screaming, line broke. Deputies surged, finishing melee with butt strokes. Vale withdrew bloodied, but alive. Eye of the storm mid-battle lulled. Rain eased to drizzle. Steam from ruptured locomotive coiled white around shattered camp like war ghosts. Bodies littered creek mercenaries and deputies alike. Leora's shoulder throbbed. She bound it with strip torn from canvas bag. Elis slumped, exhausted, but eyes still fierce. Calder leaned against stone, shaking from blood loss. Trenwith crouched beside. He can't take another round, Marshall warned. Leora swallowed. Nor can the rest of us. Vale will regroup. Once his Gatling is back. Elias crawled over, clutching waterproof portfolio he'd carried from cave. Secondary evidence sketches. We deliver these to Carson in person. Whitecliff dies. But we die first if we stay. Calder's eyes flicked to storm dark east where dawn threatened a pale bruise. We break through now. Use fog from locomotive as screen. Trenwith assessed line. 5 deputies unwounded, 2 walking wounded, plus Calder. Slim odds. Odds have never favored truth, Leora said. Truth stands anyway. She drafted Plan Rapid, Caldwell and Cho sniping rear. Others form V-wedge center around cart, loaded with spare powder barrels they'd captured earlier from Whitecliff munitions mule. Roll cart downhill, ignite at creek as distraction. During blast they sprint upstream across shallows away from train, circle to ridge where their horses waited. Dawn ride to Carson City Telegraph Tower before Whitecliff can warn city garrison. Deputies nodded. Grim. Asterisk. Drop a if you've ever felt every second turn into a blade. Asterisk cart of thunder. They lashed 3 powder kegs to 2-wheel handcart. Trailing kerosene, soaked rag as fuse. Cho lit it with steel and flint matchheads soaked. Fuse sputtered alive. Trenwith gave shove. Caldwell and Hart pushed. Cart rattled down muddy slope, wheels wobbling. He wheeled at far end, firing back as deputies cleared bridge. Leora dismounted briefly, hacked at support rope with trench knife until strands frayed. Vale's lead rider boomed onto boards. She sliced final rope. The bridge sagged but didn't. Brake needed weight. She leapt into saddle, spurred forward. As they reached bank, Vale's massive horseman hit center span. Boards cracked, rope tore, bridge collapsed. Horses, men, screaming, tumbling into frothing chasm. Vale's mount found footing on near side. He jumped free as boards fell, clinging to upright post. Rain hammered. His sword cane scraped wood as he dragged himself, eyes never leaving Leora hate. Incandescent even in storm gloom, she wished to finish him, but ammo near gone, group battered. She turned away, horses pounded into preyed-on gloom, leaving Vale's curse swallowed by flood. Asterisk, asterisk, ride to first light, asterisk, asterisk. Dawn smoldered behind thunderheads like ember behind ash. Trails merged into high desert flats where blue grama waved. Deputies. Horses steamed. Calder lurched. Leora steadied. Trenwith, leg splint slipping. Gritted teeth but navigated. At Suncrest, they sighted Carson City Telegraph Tower, a slender lattice. Above rail depot 20 furlongs out. Relief washed, but brief. A column of riders emerged from South Road Territorial Militia, flagged Whitecliff colors. Vale had likely signaled ahead via helograph before flood. 10 Lancers, 2 lever gunners on motorcar. Can't fight straight, Trenwith assessed. Bluff? Calder managed grim grin. Truth sometimes needs disguise. He pointed to dust cloud of eastbound commuter tram on spur track parallel. Board that. Civilians a shield, they won't fire into passenger car. They galloped. Cross country, intercepting tram as it slowed near water tower. Leora flagged engineer, flashing battered marshal badge. Conductor bristled, but Trenwith's authority and Calder's revolver settled debate. They loaded horses into freight compartment, then fell among shocked townsfolk, farmers, mail clerks, 2 nuns. Rain-soaked, bloodied, they looked like apocalypses. Heralds, Leora scanned windows. Militia pacing on road but hesitating at track. They needed reason to storm civilian coach. Bullet into bystander would spark territorial inquiry. Whitecliff couldn't buy off easily. Train chugged into station. Market vendors gaped at ragged posse disembarking. Telegrapher's office loomed across platform. Elias led burst portfolio. Under arm. Soldiers dismounted ringside, forming blockade at ramp. Captain in Whitecliff livery strode forward. By order of Superior Court, you are detained. Trenwith limped, flashing martial star. Interfere with federal witness and you. Court treason. Captain smirked. Court's on our retainer. He raised hand. Soldiers leveled rifles. Calder whispered. Moment of theater. He lurched forward, waving envelope he'd tucked earlier. A blank but sealed with territorial seal from Trenwith's safe. Contagion notice, he shouted hoarse. Suspected. Cholera among passengers. We quarantine telegraph office for emergency dispatch. Anyone approaches before quarantine lifted will hang by federal statute. Crowd gasped, recoiled. Even soldiers backstep cholera terror of frontier. Captain hesitated, reputation of plague ruthless. Leora seized chance, shoved through spectators with Elias and deputies. They locked telegraph office door, braced with desk. Inside, operator cowered. Trenwith presented writ. Key your fastest. Line to Washington. Operator's hands shook as Elias spread survey addendum. Trenwith dictated. Immediate injunction. Seizure assets Whitecliff Mineral. Arrest warrants for Conrad Vale. Board of Directors. He referenced Inspector General. Case number signaled earlier. Operator tapped hurriedly. Outside. Captain yelled threats. Soldiers hammered door. Glass rattled. Calder leaned against jam. Colt raised though barrel shook. Telegraph finished. Operator ripped copy, stamped. Leora exhaled yet door hinges buckled. Soldiers crashed inside. Captain shoved rifle muzzle forward. No court outruns. Whitecliff. He snatched stack of documents from operator's desk. Leora fired warning near ceiling. Wood splintered. Captain startled but regained sneer, tossing documents into stove. Flames licked edges. Stop. Leora screamed, lunging. Rifle butt cracked her wounded shoulder. Pain blinded. Elias tackled. Captain. Papers flew, some falling into fire. Deputies grappled soldiers. Room became cyclone of boots, smoke, cinders. Calder tried to aid but dizziness buckled knees. He fell against stove, head slamming pipe. World spun. Heat. Billowed. Scorched paper fluttered upward into chimney. Draft evidence ablaze. Leora, wrestling rifle, saw crucial ledger page curl into orange ember. She screamed. Shoved barrel, upward shot blasted stovepipe seam. Spark shower erupted. Flames roared up vent, igniting tar roof. Outside, townsfolk shrieked as smoke billowed from telegraph office. Bell clanged. Bucket brigade formed. Inside, chaos multiplied. Soldiers retreated coughing. Captain staggered. Coat smoldering. He drew pistol at Elias, finger white on trigger. Leora lunged, grabbing hot stove poker. She swung, striking Captain's gun hand. Bone cracked. Pistol fired wild, bullet ripping through ceiling joist. Captain collapsed, unconscious. Roof. Fire spread. Trenwith barked, out now. Deputies dragged prisoners. Elias shoveled burning documents from stove onto floor where rain dripping through broken roof doused edges. Leora stamped embers, snatching half-charred pages. The ledger sheet blackened, but center column survived key signatures legible. They staggered onto platform amid smoke. Militia scattered once townsfolk realized plague a ruse. Fire crews dumped water through roof hole. Leora held smoldering ledger to storm sky, rain cooling paper. Proof lives, she murmured. Calder collapsed beside her unconscious. Hospice of the station. Dr. Stiles, station physician, cleared waiting room, laid Calder on cot. Bullet earlier reopened shoulder artery. Head wound added concussion. Leora paced as doctor stitched, mixed laudanum. Lightning flickered through window. Storm not done. Marshal Trenwith commandeered station telephone to coordinate incoming federal marshals from Santa Fe branch. Citing telegraph confirmation, Washington responded. Task force inbound. Hold subjects. The tide turning. But Vale wasn't yet captured. Rumor said he survived flood, riding west. And Captain's militia still outside, lurking at saloon while corporate lawyers riding circuit. Battle shifting from bullets to statutes. Elias sat by Calder, hand on friend's wrist. He held line, he whispered. We owe him more than words. Leora pressed forehead to window glass cooled by rain. Thoughts drifted to shallow grave near Dry Creek, the grave that began everything. They had marched through fire and storm to stand here. Yet closure waited in Briar End where civilians still bowed under Whitecliff fear. She straightened. When Federal Task Force secures Carson evidence, I go home. Plant headstone over that grave. Dig out every secret Whitecliff buried. Elias Grimm smiled. Could use a geologist. Trenwith limped over, new telegram in hand. You'll have cavalry. Washington wants complaint affidavits from locals. We escort. Doctor emerged. Calder will live if fever stays down. Needs. Week off saddle. Calder's voice rasped from cot, weak but determined. Weak is luxury we don't own. He half smiled at Leora. You're not leaving me behind this time. She blinked tears. Stubborn bartender. Guilty. Doctor growled but started packing travel dressings. Nightfall ultimatum evening ink-filled sky. Federal marshals still en route a day ride out. Whitecliff's legal team arrived instead, slithering into station office with Captain's militia as muscle. Lead attorney, Madam Iris Quill, produced court injunction voiding Trenwith's authority due to conflict of interest. Trenwith scoffed. Signed by Judge Mortimer Dade? The one with Whitecliff stock. Quill smiled, eyeglasses glinting. Nevertheless. Binding. Surrender evidence or be held in contempt. Leora stepped forward, charred ledger in hand. We'll let Federal Circuit decide. Until then, Marshall's chain of custody remains. Quill arched brow, eyes drifting to Calder on cot. Your hero looks pale. Medical release might save his life. Calder forced a chuckle, seeing worse hangovers. Quill sighed, feigned pity, signaled captain. Militia raised rifles. Deputies mirrored. Civilians fled platform screaming. Tension. Wired air. Rain paused. Sky silent, waiting. Suddenly telegraph clerk burst from back room clutching new wire. Message from Washington Priority. He handed to Trenwith. Trenwith read aloud, voice carrying. Effective immediately. Marshal Silas Trenwith granted provisional U.S. Deputy Directorate powers to secure evidence in case file Whitecliff. Black vein. Any interference punishable as obstruction of federal investigation. Gasps. Quill's smile faded. Captain's rifle barrel dropped an inch, but she recovered. Provisional. You still need judge's writ to detain my clients, including Officer Vale, should he appear. A new voice answered from doorway. Allow me. All heads turned. There stood Sarah Whitley, the Inspector General's field liaison, storm cloak dripping. Behind her, 6 U.S. Marshals armed. She produced embossed warrant folder. Judge Rusk signed at dawn, federal authority unsullied by corporate gratuity. She handed Leora second copy. Miss Thane, your testimony named in affidavit. Ready to finish this? Leora's fingers shook as she took document. Years of grief condensed into one thin sheaf. Quill scowled. You still need living witness linking Creed directly to board. Leora's gaze hardened. We have merit creeds. Confession on record. Marshal Trenwith took statement while Creed bled out. Quill blanched, hadn't known. She pivoted on heel, stalking out with Captain. But as doors swung, Vale burst through, soaked, face cut. The locomotive whistle keened through pre-dawn gloom. Its cry threading gull, shrieks swirling over Santa Monica's fog-shrouded pier. Sleep-starved lanterns swung from spars. Gullies of steam hissed around iron wheels as the special westbound pulled to a stop. Leora Thane stepped down first, boots clanging on rain-wet planks that smelled of brine and coal soot. Behind her, Elias disembarked, clutching the field portfolio. Marshal Trenwith stiff-legged but resolved, and finally Calder ray-bandaged, pale, yet eyes sparking with familiar measured fire. They had chased the Whitecliff board 2 days across. Desert Rails fought off deputized militia at water towers, and now found themselves shoulder to shoulder with Pacific swells that glimmered gunmetal beneath dawning light. Somewhere beyond the surf line, a steam liner named Providence Shade stood ready, chartered for mineral reconnaissance, but in truth a gilded lifeboat for thieves escaping justice. Their quarry intended to steam south to Mazatlan, then catch oceanic passage to Rio or Canton, where extradition died a slow bureaucratic death. A lone Pinkerton in Pier Guardhouse clocked the arrivals. He reached for telegraph key, but Calder's whistle pre-empted soft. 2 notes. Deputy Cho had flanked the shack earlier. A short scuffle later, the line fell silent. The pier's watchdogs slept under their own palm shackles. Harbor masters. Log says Providence departs on the morning ebb tide. Trenwith growled, reading from docket seized aboard train. That gives us 1 hour. 1 hour to smuggle ourselves aboard, find corporate ledgers, and serve warrants, Leora clarified, scanning fog-draped silhouettes of cargo booms. And do it without a shot that might startle them into raising. Anchor early, Calder adjusted sling. Subtlety then. Always my favorite. He nodded toward looming break bulk warehouse. Room and arched doors gaped half open, revealing crates marked medical relief use Navy Corps. The Navy's. Donation run to Samoa, Calder mused. Uniform trunks too, I suspect. They crept inside, picked through supply lots until Elias produced canvas seabag, stenciled surgical handle carefully. Beneath, folded whites and navy blue dress coats awaited. Within minutes, rain-slick travelers became hasty facsimiles of naval medical staff. Leora tugged Officer Keystone cap low, hoping shadows masked bullet nick on collar. A military launch idled near customs ramp. Petty officer dozing over tiller. Trenwith flashed borrowed med badge. Sleepy sailor waved them aboard, believing official orders. Outboard engines sputtered them across harbor where fog muffled gulls. The steel flank of Providence Shade loomed 9600 tons of opulence, stacks belching low coal exhaust. Gold scrollwork spelled her name beneath bridge wings already bustling with early deckhands. Calder timed climb with foghorn. Boarding via maintenance ladder, a baff stack. They fanned onto boat deck, hearts pounding. No alarm. Passengers still. A bed in staterooms. Only stewards moved like whispers. Good dot inside. Teak corridor smelled of lemon oil. Corporate suite far side, Elias murmured, recalling ship manifest from rated telegraph. 2 connecting salons guarded. Trenwith. Produced cuffed Smith & Wesson, checked rounds. Quiet until necessary, they advanced single file. Past pantry, they nearly collided with Purser, a kindly man balancing ledgers. Calder feigned officer dignity, inspecting cholera prophylaxis stores. Purser blanched and bolted other. Direction fear of plague trumped curiosity again. Suite corridor. 2 Pinkerton guards lounged outside mahogany doors discussing stock tickers. Leora's pulse quickened. She recognized one Jeb Corliss, ruthless at Hollow Mesa. While they debated tariffs, Cho slid behind, applied sap to nape. Bodies eased to carpet. Calder listened at door, muffled laughter, clink of crystal. Bored. Celebrating escape. He cracked latch with pick fashioned from surgeon's probe. Door swung, revealing chandelier brilliance and half-dozen executives in silk robes toasting sunrise with brandy. Iris Quill glowed among them, wrist splinted testimony to prior melee. Executives froze at intrusion of officers. Calder cleared. Throat, naval health inspection, possible plague risk. Please follow, gunshot shattered crystal. Quill had retrieved Derringer from robe pocket. Shot missed Calder but smashed sconce. Chaos erupted. Elias dove behind settee, Trenwith. Fired into ceiling. Leora vaulted coffee table, tackled Quill. Papers flew. Brandy-soaked carpet. Board chairman Leland Moreau tried to reach shortwave radio. Calder's revolver barked. Radio sparked, useless. Deputy Cho herded panicked executives, cuffing with cord. Trenwith read warrant over din. Atmosphere stank of fear and spilled cognac. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. The noise, however, carried topside. Alarm klaxon brayed. Fog lights flared, and ship crew scrambled. A bosun roared. Stowaways on B deck, Footfalls thundered. Pinkertons from lower cabins armed. Calder winced. Stealth failed. He motioned. Evidence first. Elias stuffed ledgers into medical satchel. Leora shoved Quill against wall, fists white. Where's Conrad Vale? Quill spat bloodied lip. Dead, you fools, we paid better men. How many? Her grin leaked malice. Enough to feed sharks 2 days from now. Deck tremor rattled glass. Engines ramping. RP Ms. Captain, intending immediate departure to escape jurisdiction. Trenwith. Cursed. They'll slip beyond 12-mile boundary in 40. We need bridge. Gunfire peppered doorframe. Pinkertons pressing. Cho slid heavy divan across entry. Bullets thudded upholstery. Fire extinguisher hissed, filling suite with acrid fog. Elias had triggered it to obscure. They exited balcony, climbing catwalk toward Focus Lee and biting. Wind, dawn-burned fog tangerine. Pinkertons pursued along lifeboat stations. Calder laid covering fire. Round-clipped officer's hat. Crewman swung boom, trying to knock them overboard. Leora ducked, leapt gap to cargo crane walkway. Below, Pacific. Frothed slate green dot bridge windows glared. Captain Barkley barked orders, helmsman spinning wheel. Providence shade turned bow to open sea. Harbor tugs shouted curses as tow lines snapped. Elias pointed to vent stack access rung. Shortcut to bridge roof. Trenwith hesitant with leg. Brace, but Calder shooed. Go, I'll follow ground. Leora and Elias scaled, surfacing amid coal soot at top of wheelhouse. They crawled to skylight. Inside, Captain, First Mate, Radio Officer. No Vale. Quill's claim stands, Leora signaled. Elias produced flashbang recovered earlier from Pinkerton guard. Counted rolled into skylight seam. Boom white flash. Bridge maple glass shattered. Crew blinded. Siblings dropped through opening. Elias. Leveled carbine. Engines full stopper. Next shot finds boiler gauge. Mate surrendered. Leora seized telegraph lever, punching stop strokes. Down below, engines throttled to idle, vibration slackening. Calder burst through wing door dragging. Cho and detainees as shield for Pinkertons behind. Trenwith followed, training gun on captain now rising groggy. Martial voice iron. Providence shade under federal seizure. Stand down. Pinkertons hesitated, seeing board captured. One fired anyway. Round struck brass compass, ricocheted into mate's thigh. Mate shrieked. Others dropped guns. Crew hands raised. Leora exhaled ocean salted breath, but siren whooped. Harbor patrol cutter barreled across waves. Red flags blooming. Corporate security vessel mounting swivel cannon. Captain sneered. Those are Whitecliff waters now. Trenwith smacked helm with cane. Not while I breathe. He eyed Calder, bandages crimsoning again. Hold wheel. Calder stepped, gloved hand gripping spoke despite tremor. He cocked grin. Always. Wanted to 10 bar on a bridge. He spun wheel hard starboard, vessel yawing, forcing cutter to veer avoid collision. Leora telegraphed engine room, reverse. Screws churned foam, sucking water astern. Cutter cut throttle, negotiating wake. Elias loaded flare gun. Fired Crimson Star, exploding over cutter signal to Harbormaster. Harbor guns on breakwater rotated, uncertain which side rightful. Trenwith waved warrant copy through shattered window. Spotters peered telescope, saw federal seal. Shore battery raised side flags, friend. They trained guns on cutter. The security craft idled, captain raising hands. Relief rippled. Behind. Pink dawn fully bloomed, painting Pacific gold. Providence shade floated within harbor limit, engines. Silent, bored in irons. Liora sank to deck plating. Exhausted smile meeting Calder's, storm over for now. Elias crossed, crouched between them. Brother, bartender, sister, he murmured. Fine crew. Siren of harbor police skiff wailed, approaching to take custody. Cho exhaled long. Trenwith braced on railing, face lined by fatigue but eyes shining in new light. Asterisk, asterisk, yet justices. Ledger still unsettled, asterisk, asterisk, 2 hours later. Dockside courtroom, improvised in customs warehouse, processed prisoners under federal gaze. Newsman scribbled wildly, telegram already seeding coasts with scandal. Stocks of Whitecliff plummeted by noon, but mid-afternoon, courier dashed in with dispatch. Vale sighted a live commandeered coastal schooner overnight, heading south with 6 mercenaries. Calder, fresh bandage, chuckled. Man's part. Ghost. Leora pocketed dispatch. Then we chased that ghost. Trenwith sighed, weary, but nodded. Inspector says Navy cutter leaves at moonrise. You 3 have berths, witness protection or pursuit, your choice. Elias gazed seaward where gulls wheeled above anchored cutter. One more grave to exhume. Calder adjusted sling, sipping tonic. And maybe a quiet bar in Mazatlan afterward. Leora gripped their shoulders, feeling thunder somewhere far off over horizon. The story storm not yet spent. Outside cameras flashed as prisoners paraded. Quill hissed, truth drowned slow. Leora met her gaze calm. But it swims. Heartbeat. The planks beneath the cutter's deck throbbed with it as boilers chuffed, as rigging creaked, as every soul aboard braced for black water pursuit. Moonrise silvered the swells off Santa Monica, and the asterisk asterisk U.S. revenue cutter asterisk resolute asterisk asterisk thrust its sharp bow through foam, engines thrumming like distant drums of war. Leora Thane stood at the starboard rail, spray kissing her cheeks, eyes narrowed southward where Conrad Vale's hijacked schooner, Wraith of San Esteban, ghosted along the Baja current 2 miles ahead, silhouette barely discernible against the starlit horizon. Calder Rye leaned against the companionway bulkhead, bandaged shoulder hidden beneath borrowed navy coat. Fever still haunted his eyes, yet resolve lit them brighter than any phosphorescence trailing in the cutter's wake. Elias Thane perched beside the helmsman, wind-tangling hair finally free of mine dust, skin still sallow but spirit burning. Marshal Silas Trenwith paced amidships consulting charts with Lieutenant Merriweather, Resolute S. Gaunt skipper. Schooners. Shallow draft lets her hug coastline, the lieutenant muttered. She dart into coves we can't risk. But we've the boilers 10 knots faster on a straight. How straight stays the sea? Trenwith replied, gazing at churned moonpath where whitecaps winked like a million unblinking eyes. Asterisk drop a in chat if you've ever chased truth into the dark, knowing dawn might never break. Asterisk night hunter fog unfurled behind headlands, rolling low like breath of slumbering leviathan. The schooner's stern lamp flickered in and out, taunting. Merriweather ordered running lights dimmed. Resolute became a shadow longer than memory. Engineering crew fed coal, pistons pounded. Every lurch jarred Calder's stitches, yet he refused. Bunk shadowed Leora's stance at rail like an anchor. He cleared throat. If Vale beaches to resupply, terrain's ours. At sea he holds cards, knows every reef here. Leora kept gaze ahead. Then we force him to shortcut him between anchor and breakers. You thinking what I think? He asked Dot. She tipped chin. Yes. Steam broadside, fire warning volleys till he hugs cliffs. Then we board. Calder allowed himself a small smile. You've become quite the strategist. She answered without humor. The sea doesn't forgive miscalculation, neither will I. Farther aft, Elias tuned portable short wave set, scavenged from Providence shade whispering code to Santa Barbara Station. Asterisk pursuit south. Coordinate blockade. Static barked back. Cutter Guardian from San Diego intercepting at dawn. Asterisk rain began as fine drizzle. Soon fat drops thudding canvas. Standing rigging sang in gusts. Moon hooded behind scudding clouds. Leora inhaled salt spiced with ozone, the sky storing thunder again. Storm will scrub visibility, Elias warned. Storm may be friend, Trenwith said, limping over. He tapped barometer needle falling. Vail'll think we abandoned chase and gale. We use cover. Calder's tired grin sharpened. Ghost hunting ghost. Wind rising. At 0300 hours wind veered west, building whitecaps into snarling crests. Resolute S-hull shuddered, spray sweeping deck. Lanterns guttered. Men lashed crates. Lieutenant Merriweather shouted trim orders. Sails reefed half-mast. Though engines carried main thrust ahead, the schooner vanished in squall curtains. Leora tightened oilskin cloak, peering through spyglass, but saw only sleet of rain. She turned to Calder, found him pale. Below, she urged. He shook head. Eyes matter more than bandages tonight. She let him remain. The worry nipped crew on bow fired flash flare. Green star arcing into maelstrom every 15 minutes to gauge distance. Sometimes faint echo of schooner's return flare winked. Cat and mouse across watery abyss. 4:30 the lookout cried. Light off port quarter close. All rushed. Amid rain veils, oil lamp glowed from schooner's taffrail. Not 5 cable lengths left. Vail had slowed, perhaps reefing sails against storm. Merriweather slammed telegraph engines throttled. Bring us a beam, Trenwith ordered. Gunners loaded the forward 6-pounder with star shell. On command they fired brilliant magnesium burst over Wraith, illuminating deck where dark figures scrambled. Vail's voice carried across wind, magnified by speaking cone. Back off, Marshal, or I scuttle and take your evidence to Poseidon. Flash of pistol muzzle. He shot on powder kegs stacked behind mizzen as threat. Leora's gut clenched. If Vail sank, ledgers vanish. Their victory ash. Calder met her eye. Need him alive, he hissed. Merriweather swung resolute parallel. 50 yards off, rain hammered both ships. Waves heaved hulls in uneven waltz. Gunners loaded smoke shell, launching across Vail's bow, a curtain of choking white. Under cover, Resolute surged closer. Vail responded, ordering starboard cannon. They had salvaged swivel from prior escort. Boom cracked night, iron ball skipping over whitecaps, smashing Resolute S-rail, showering splinters. A seaman cried, falling their first casualty of sea chapter. Trenwith barked. Return fire minimal disable, don't sink. Crew loaded. Chain shot aimed at schooner's mainmast rigging. Last link's word, shredded canvas, tangled halyard. Wraith lost headway, yawing leeward. Elias pumped fist. Leora clenched rail. Stage set. Asterisk smash that like if you've ever fought wind, water, and wicked men all at once. Asterisk, leap of faith distance now 3 boat lengths. Boarding hooks prepared. Merriweather roared timing. Rain stung like needles. Leora slung carbine. Took boarding line. Trenwith waved deputies, Cho, Caldwell, and Hart to follow. 9 sailors formed restive party. Calder insisted, though breathing rasped. Your shoulder, she protested. Still have another arm, he answered. And a promise to keep. At apex of swell, Resolute scraped near Wraith's quarter. Boarders away. Hooks flew, biting gunwale. Lines taut. Leora vaulted rail, swung across chasm, boots thudding onto slick planks of enemy deck. Elias landed beside, rolling to absorb impact. Sailors followed, melee igniting instant. Pinkertons met them, sabers glinting. Thunder boomed overhead. Leora parried downward slash with rifle barrel, butt stroked attacker overboard. Elias used belaying pin as staff, sweeping legs. Confronted mercenary with axe. He ducked, ran shoulder, knife hand jabbing solar plexus. Merc fell, lost to darkness between hulls. Vail emerged atop forecastle, cloak whipping, sword cane in lightning flash. Back to graves with you. He roared, lunging down companion stairs. Leora met him mid-deck. Steel rang against rifle barrel. She pivoted, using storm sway to leverage momentum, but he countered with cunning footwork learned on inland dueling lawns. Not rocking decks, They traded strikes along Rain's slick planks, Vale's blade slashing coat, grazing ribs. Leora scored. Cut along his cheek. Blood and rain mingled. Sudden wave pitched ships, deck canted. Vale used roll, barreled into her, driving both toward bulwark. She grappled, preventing blade thrust. They slammed rail. Lightning revealed foaming abyss below. Vale head butted her brow stars burst behind eyes. Blade at throat. Click Calder's Colt at Vale's ear. Step away. Voice was deathly calm. Vale sneered sideways. Shadow bartender. Kill me. Spool my secrets to see. Calder's gaze never wavered. She won't kill, I might. Vale's eyes flicked moment of doubt. Leora twisted free. Striking pummel to his wrist, cane fell. She slammed elbow to temple. Vale collapsed unconscious. Across deck, skirmishes died down as remaining mercenaries surrendered. Seeing leader down, mast crippled and revenue cutter looming, guns on. Trenwith marched captives aft. Lightning crackled again, revealing disaster. Chain shot had torn more than sail. Mainmast foot splintered. Rigging groaned ominous. Elias shouted, "She's coming down." All scrambled. With thunderous crack, mast toppled starboard, smashing bulwark, dragging sails into waves. Ship lurched, listing 15 degrees. Water surged over rail, bilge breached. A sailor yelled. Leora dashed a companion ladder, saw water racing through hull seam. Wraith began slow mortal roll. "Abandon to cutter," Trenwith ordered. They dragged prisoners toward lines. But Vale regained clarity, wrenching from Cho's grip. Bolting to quarterdeck were sealed iron strongbox chained beneath. Binnacle, no doubt final cache of secrets. Leora pursued. Vale hacked chain with boarding axe found. Beam shifted. Water. Knee-deep. He hefted box, staggering toward yawning breach. She realized he'd rather drown evidence than surrender. She sprinted across tilting deck. Waves smashed through hatch, sweeping her. She slammed against stanchion. Bruised but upright. Vale neared whole. Leora leapt, tackling him into flooded scupper. Box slipped, wedged between stanchions. They fought half submerged. Vale punched. Her wounded shoulder. Pain flared. She found forgotten derringer in duster pocket. Trophy from Quill earlier. Pressed muzzle to Vale's thigh. Fired. Boom muffled by rain. He screamed, blood clouding water. Box shifted. Leora grabbed handle, straining. Vale clawed her arm. Calder appeared, wading chest deep, grabbed Vale's collar. Pistol whipped him into unconsciousness again. He then helped Leora free box. Ship groaned, listing further. Above. Cutter crew shouted, throwing additional lines. They hoisted box with tackle while sailors hauled captives. Last across were Leora and Calder, waves submerging deck behind them. As they swung toward Resolute, Wraith gave final shudder, stern. Sinking. Lightning framed sinking ship like tombstone before darkness swallowed it. Asterisk. Hit subscribe if you've ever held on to one fragile hope while the world sank beneath your feet. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Eye of the Maelstrom, asterisk, asterisk, back aboard cutter. Prisoner secured box. Chained in brig, but storm climax yet to pass. Barometer bottomed. Lieutenant Merriweather shouted, "Hurricane spin off unexpected turn. We must run for shelter inside Anacapa Channel." Resolute turned northeast, engines full, yet swells now mountainous. Rain stung like shot, wind shrieked rigging. Water cascaded over bow, flooding deck rails. Trenwith ordered everyone below, but Leora refused, helping lash evidence chest. Calder collapsed finally, fever spiking. Doctor carried him to infirmary. Elias joined Leora at quarterdeck. "Mast down, seas rising, channel may trap us," she offered, grim laugh. "We outran desert bullets just to drown at sea." Trenwith struggled along rail, leg brace waterlogged. Focus, we make island lee storm break behind cliffs. Hours blurred to nightmare ship, climbing dark liquid walls, dropping into valleys. Prisoners retched in brig. Boards creaked ominously. Vale, leg tourniquet, raved half delirium. You can't bury me again, I bury you. At dawn ragged. Edge, Anacapa's basalt arches appeared through driving sleet teeth of Pacific. Resolute angled behind northmost stack. Seas calmed marginally. Rock face blocked worst wind. Helmsman anchored. Steam vents hissed relief. But line parted, crusher. Waves smashing bow sideways into shoal. Hull scraped grinding roar. Bilge plates cracked. Water gushed in forward compartment. Pumps, Merriweather bellowed. Crew scrambled with hoses, but leak outpaced pumps. Leora's heart hammered. Would any voyage stay afloat? She rushed infirmary Calder. Delirious, doctor stitching reopened artery. He gripped her wrist with surprising strength. Promise gravestone, he muttered. Hold that thought, she whispered. Back on deck, Trenwith negotiated evacuation to rocky shelf ashore via cutters, jolly boats. They would offload evidence and prisoners, wait storms pass, radio Coast Guard. Leora insisted box go first. Rain slackened. Glimpses of sun split clouds. Yet new peril. Cliffs riddled with caves. Waves crashed violent against landing. First, jolly boat capsized. 2 sailors swept but survived clinging to kelp. Time thinning. Merriweather devised winch line from mainmast stub to cliff ridge. Crew shot grapnel via cannon. Ropes secured. They rigged bosun's chair to send cargo and wounded across. Elias volunteered to transfer evidence chest. Harness creaked. He swung across ravine of roaring surf, reaching cave ledge drenched but alive. Next chair bore Vale, bound and gagged. Halfway across a rogue gust flipped seat. Ropes snapped partially. Vale dangled over Fury screeching. Cho hauled slack. Vale spun, leg wound reopening. Leora scrambled to belay line. Vale's weight plus chest's earlier strain frayed cord. Dragon roar of surf below promised final end. Vale locked eyes with Leora, hatred raw but tinged by pleading. In that instant she remembered shallow grave coldness, how mercy had been stolen from her brother. She gritted teeth, hauled with all might. Trenwith and Hart joined, pulling Vale onto deck soaked but breathing. Why? Trenwith asked quietly. Justice weighs more than vengeance, she panted. Vale spat seawater. Your mercy curses you, you'll never outrun my shadow. Lightning answered distantly, storm retreating. Anacapa refuge, by evening survivors huddled inside Sea Cave Cathedral. Tide pools glowing with bioluminescent plankton. Evidence lockbox perched beside driftwood fire, soldiers guarding. Captives. Outside, Resolute rested against rock. Hull breached but afloat until cutters arrived. Doctor reported Calder stable, though fever still tugged. Leora sat beside him on blanket of sailcloth, watching phosphorescent waves roll. Elias approached, handing warmed tin mug. Tomorrow Coast Guard tows us mainland, he said. Washington celebrates rebellion quelled, yet Whitecliff's network bigger. She nodded. Briar End still waits for headstone. Calder stirred, eyes clearer, one promise at a time. Grave first, then rebuild. Thunder distant like applause of gods slowly settling. Starlight broke above cave arch, illuminating damp stone. Leora allowed herself a single long breath. The first in weeks not choked by fear or gun smoke. She glanced at sleeping silhouettes. Trenwith leaning on cane-like sentry. Cho polishing tarnished badge. Merriweather plotting salvage. They were bruised, broken in places, but very much alive. And she knew Story's heart still beat. Cliffhanger, because at that moment, Vale's eyes snapped open in fire glow calculating. Serpent cold. A faint metallic rasp slid under crackle of driftwood. Hidden cuff shimmy, maybe? He met her gaze, smiled through cracked lip. And outside cave mouth, a different vessel's lights bobbed off horizon, unfamiliar silhouette, creeping without running. Lamps, hull-painted midnight. Engines muffled. Another player had entered the game. Asterisk droppa, if you feel the tide is still turning, and make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Asterisk. The phosphorescent surf at Anacapa's edge lapped in ghost tongue murmurs, as though the sea itself warned that night's reprieve was illusion, that the storm had simply changed masks. In the sea cave, shadows leapt in the firelight, bound. Prisoners, exhausted sailors, and at the center a lockbox whose steel ribs guarded the most fragile thing on earth, truth. Leora Thane slept lightly beside that box. Colt within reach, pulse finally slowed after the chase. Calder Ray rested under oilcloth near the embers, fever reigned but not broken. Marshal Trenwith snored softly, chin on chest, cane across knees. Outside, wind had quieted, but the hush carried omen. When Leora's eyelids fluttered, she saw. Vale's gaze already fixed on her from the prisoner's ring-wide, reptilian patient. A metallic rasp sounded again. Shackles? She sat up, heart knocking. The ring of deputies keeping watch had thinned, half the men on salvage duty securing. Resolute. Cho crouched by the entrance, eyes drooping. Leora's whisper cut through the hush. Cho, relieve watch. But Cho's head jerked, then lulled again. Drugged? Leora stood, ice bristling her spine. In that instant a flare of white magnesium split the cave mouth. Silhouettes surged in, armored silhouettes in oilskin slickers, mercenaries of a different brand. Suppressed rifles snapped. Cho slumped without cry. Trenwith jolted awake. Leora fired, rounds sparking off steel cuirass. The newcomers advanced with practiced precision. Federal prisoners. Their leader barked, voice run through tin respirator. Stand down or be pacified. Leora crouched behind boulder, dragging Caldwell's repeater. She glimpsed insignia * Cortez. Security International *, a paramilitary firm rumored to protect mining interests across Latin America. Whitecliffe's contingency plan. Elias. The phosphorescent surf at Anacapa's edge lapped in ghost tongue murmurs, as though the sea itself warned that night's reprieve was illusion, that the storm had simply changed masks. In the sea cave, shadows leapt in the firelight, bound. Prisoners, exhausted sailors, and at the center a lockbox whose steel ribs guarded the most fragile thing on earth, truth. Leora Thane slept lightly beside that box. Colt within reach, pulse finally slowed after the chase. Calder Ray rested under oilcloth near the embers, fever reigned but not broken. Marshal Trenwith snored softly, chin on chest, cane across knees. Outside, wind had quieted, but the hush carried omen. When Leora's eyelids fluttered, she saw. Vale's gaze already fixed on her from the prisoner's ring-wide, reptilian patient. A metallic rasp sounded again. Shackles? She sat up, heart knocking. The ring of deputies keeping watch had thinned, half the men on salvage duty securing. Resolute. Cho crouched by the entrance, eyes drooping. Leora's whisper cut through the hush. Cho, relieve watch. But Cho's head jerked, then lulled again. Drugged? Leora stood, ice bristling her spine. In that instant a flare of white magnesium split the cave mouth. Silhouettes surged in, armored silhouettes in oilskin slickers, mercenaries of a different brand. Suppressed rifles snapped. Cho slumped without cry. Trenwith jolted awake. Leora fired, rounds sparking off steel cuirass. The newcomers advanced with practiced precision. Federal prisoners. Their leader barked, voice run through tin respirator. Stand down or be pacified. Leora crouched behind boulder, dragging Caldwell's repeater. She glimpsed insignia * Cortez. Security International *, a paramilitary firm rumored to protect mining interests across Latin America. Whitecliffe's contingency plan. Elias. She yelled, but brother already tugged Calder toward deeper recesses. Vale, still bound, laughed in staccato hiss, Shadow never ends. Deputy Hart attempted draw. Tranquilizer dart hit neck, he crumpled. The invaders MZO. Subdue, not kill, remove witnesses. They lobbed percussion drones. Muffled concussions birthed pressure waves that shattered lanterns. Darkness swallowed cave but for silver moon slicing entrance. Leora fired again, blind buying seconds. She heard lockbox drag across stone. Mercenaries targeting evidence. Teeth gritted, she rolled forward, seized box handle. 2 hands pulled. Opposite Merc and visor, strength mechanical via exobrace. He wrenched. She stabbed dagger upward blade, skipped on armor plate. He head-butted. Stars burst in her vision, but she clung. Footfalls pounded from tunnel. Elias returning with Calder, who supported himself on makeshift crutch. Calder fired one-handed. Bullet found gap at mercenary's clavicle. Screech of pain, brace hissed. Fluid, grip released. Box slid toward abyssal tide pool. Leora wrested it aside. Trenwith bellowed martial oath, but he too took dart. Leg brace tangled, he toppled. Half the defenders down. 3 mercenaries pressed forward. Leader raised Sonic. Baton whine swelling. Calder staggered to intercept, but blood loss tilted world. Leora shoved him behind stalagmite. She had one ace, the cave's morphology. Limestone tunnels branched into twisty wind channels where sound amplified unpredictably. "Elias," she shouted. The echo trick. They had mapped echo nodes earlier. While passing time, Elias darted into passage B, banging mining pick on wall twice, hollow booms ricocheted, multiplying like army. Mercenaries spun, confused. Leora flung pebble up side tunnel, noise illusions layering. Using distraction, she holstered Colt, yanked signal flare from belt, ignited phosphor red, then hurled into tide pool where oil film floated from wreck salvage. Flame-touched slick whoosh blue fire snaked across water like dragon's breath. Lighting cave and otherworld glow, mercenaries recoiled. Sonic baton miss, fired pulse against stalactite. Shards rained on helmets, in that heartbeat of chaos. Vale acted his shackles gone, lockpick glinting. He sprang at the dazed Cortez leader, seized sidearm, shot him point blank. The armor absorbed lethal punch but staggered leader. Vale pivoted toward Leora, madness and exhilaration mingling. She dove as bullet cut air where head had been. Flashbang grenade rolled from Merc's belt, bounced, landed near Calder. Leora lunged, kicked it deep into tide pool, submerged boom muffled. Pressure wave thumped but water cooled, shrapnel. She surfaced to find Vale sprinting toward lunar shimmer at entrance, intending getaway by boat with evidence. He slung rifle, shoulder gushing from earlier bullet, but adrenaline carrying him. 3 Cortez mercs remained, momentarily leaderless. They pivoted between capturing board chairman and retrieving contract target, box. Indecision froze them. Leora made choice for them. She grabbed box chain, clipped carabiner to her belt, then bolted opposite Vale deeper into cavern system. "Come get it," she taunted. Metallic drag echoed. Mercs gave chase, headlamps painting. Walls. Leora pushed beyond glow into narrow fissure where tidal borers formed blowholes. She'd explored earlier, labyrinth with only one safe exit. Behind, rifle fire sparked, rounds whined off karst. Chain clanked obnoxious, but she refused. Drop evidence, tide thundered. She dove through slit as waves surged, water blasting pursuers. One was knocked against stalagmite, helmet cracking. She emerged into moonlit grotto, open to sky, the cathedral columns arching 50 feet up. Bioluminescent algae carpeted. Pool, casting eerie aqualight. Dead end for most. But she had studied blowhole map. There was vertical chimney leading to cliff top. Too tight for armored brutes. Merc leader clambered in after, visor cracked, rage fueling. He raised rifle, click wet chamber misfed. He dropped weapon, drew shock baton. Leora unhooked box, set on ledge. She wielded dagger but parchment. A fatigue slowed. He advanced. 2 more mercs behind formed semi-circle. Water dripped from gear. Leader growled. Hand evidence. She lifted chin. Come take it. Merc lunged. She sidestepped, slashed knee joint. Hose fluid hissed. Brace. Failed. He collapsed. Second swung butt. She blocked with chain, metal to metal clanging sparks. Pain lanced elbow. Third raised dart gun. She kicked Leader's down body into aim. Dart pierced his neck. Leader spasmed, unconscious. The dart gunner cursed, fumbled reload. Echoing shout overhead. Leora! Elias's silhouette at chimney. Rim, rope in hand. She seized chain hook to rope loop. He lowered. Dart gunner fired. Dart grazed her calf. Numbing cold shot upward. She leapt anyway, gripping rope, hauling with remaining leg while Elias hoisted. Dart gunner tried follow. But bulky armor slipped on algae. He aimed rifle upward. Muzzle flash lit grotto. Bullet tearing rope strands but not severing. Hands reached Calder's. He and Cho anchored rope topside. They dragged her in box up just as rope snapped below. Mercenary's curse echoed fade. She collapsed on plateau. Breathing ragged. Moon peeked through cloud rag, illuminating her ripped coat, blood mixing water. Elias knelt injecting stimulant to counter toxin. Feeling crept back. Vale's gunshot below. Calder tackled Vale, slamming injured shoulder. Pain unmained him. Deputies cuffed again. Double iron. Aftershocks by sunrise. USS Guardian anchored offshore. Landing craft ferried wounded and evidence. Surgeon stabilized Vale's thigh, ensuring he faced trial not grave. Coast Guard engineers patched Resolute float, towing cutter mainland. On deck of Guardian, Leora watched Anacapa shrink, morning sun gilding arches. She pressed bandaged calf, reflecting on graves, the shallow one by Dry Creek, now due proper stone. The unmarked tide pool that almost became hers. The watery graves of mercenaries who chose coin over conscience. Calder joined, arm in sling, fever finally broken. Storms behind? He asked. Skies look clear, she answered, though horizon still wore thin clouds. But storms come again. We stand when they do. Elias approached holding newspapers hot off Navy press relay. Asterisk Whitecliff board arraigned. Stock crash triggers federal oversight asterisk. Below fold, local heroine Leora Thane to testify before Senate. She blinked. Heroine? Calder chuckled. Legends start quietly. You buried a grave and dug up hope. World notices. Trenwith hailed. They were docking San Pedro. Federal marshals waiting to escort them east for trial. Another odyssey ahead, but of words not bullets. Leora exhaled. Long sea air inflating every bruise till it hurt good. First, Briar End. We owe that headstone. Calder and Elias nodded. Merriweather secured train passage. Vale transferred under quadruple guard, wrists and ankles bound, yet voice oily. Road to Washington long, gravel cuts. No one answered. 1 month later, desert wind carried spring scent when Leora knelt beside the finished marker on. Quiet rise above Dry Creek. Asterisk Elias Thane lost and found. Truth unearthed. Beneath, smaller line. For those still unheard, asterisk nearby. A second stone. Sarah Callow Rye, Calder's beloved, finally memorialized where legend's shadow began. Town of Briar End bustled below, no longer bowed. Whitecliff claims voided. Miners reclaimed rights. Sheriff Kinnock stood re-elected with reinforced courage. Children played beneath storefront awnings newly painted. Calder placed bouquet of juniper sprigs. His bartender's hands, once instruments of death, trembled only from emotion. Trenwith led small honor guard. Cho Caldwell Hart present. Merriweather sent framed photo of crew. Elias spoke. Every grave teaches what life forgets. He gestured to valley where fresh seed rose gleamed from thawed earth. Lesson endures. Leora rose, wind tugging auburn hair now trimmed. In distance train whistle called. They would depart tomorrow east, Senate testimony looming. But tonight, Silver Star Saloon reopened under new sign. Shadow and Thane Mercantile and Tea. Calder insisted no stronger toast than tea for scars. At dusk people gathered. Leora recounted journey bullets, storms and choices. Audience quiet until she ended. Peace costs courage every sunrise. Applause rolled. Later, secluded booth. Calder asked, if roads diverge after Washington? She smiled. Roads don't diverge, they weave. She lifted teacup. To weaving. They clinked porcelain. Outside, evening star blinked first. Sandy wind repeating ancient lullaby. No gunfire, no sirens, only laughter drifting like embers toward night sky. Yet miles away, in federal penitentiary holding cell, Conrad Vale stared at barred window, lips shaping silent vow. Story seeds rarely perish, they lie dormant. But that was tomorrow's worry. Tonight, Leora Thane finally felt earth solid beneath her feet, unshaken by graves or waves. She closed eyes, hearing quiet town heartbeats sync with her own.